Hello guys, this is your friend Naruto Audio Fanfics and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is what if Naruto was raised by a good Kyūbi? Naruto times Haku times Hinata times Sakura times Ino times Tenten times Anko times Harem, Part 1. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. Sarutobi, once again the Sandaime Hokage, was looking over his village with weary eyes while holding a newborn baby, keeping it safe from the public. Just moments before, the Konoha no Go Ruden Senko, Konoha's golden flash, of Konohagakure and the newly appointed Yondaime Hokage passed away in order to save the village that he loved. The saddest thing was, the people he died to protect would not honor his last wish by honoring the fact that this young boy, this young man, would have the burden of being the jail cell of the Kyūbi no Yoko, while keeping himself sane from the Kitsune King. Naruto, I wish your father could have chosen someone different for this life job, although, he would never forgive himself if he did choose that route. Sarutobi thought to himself while protectively holding the baby in his fragile and brittle hands that did much throughout the professor's long life. He was now adorned with the robes of the Hokage once again, not that he was happy about it. He knew that the council did this on purpose to make sure they could keep his power in check, and the bastards knew that he considered Naruto like a son of his, and they wouldn't hesitate to kill him for what they thought he was. I now understand why Tsunade and Jiraiya vowed never to come back here after they left. I should have joined them, but I could never leave Kazama Arashi alone to deal with the darker side of Konoha by himself. The man was a saint and a genius shinobi, but sadly he was new to politics and ignorant to the blind idealism of the village's elders and the ways they sought to uphold their views. He thought once again as he went behind his desk and got out a small crib. He knew that he couldn't keep Naruto forever, but he'd be damned if he was out of Naruto's life as soon as it began. Turning his face to the small infant that laid asleep in his hands, he frowned at what his life would be like if he was to know of his past. Vowing to tell two people of his true last name, one now and one when he retired, the professor signed Naruto's birth certificate as Uzumaki Naruto. Sighing quickly, he called in Hatake Kakashi and explained everything to the man. Taking a few minutes to collect himself, Kakashi said that he couldn't take him in for personal reasons, but he would keep his eye on him. He also vowed to make sure that the elders of Konoha would not corrupt his sensei's son. The other person was going to be hard to track, but if he knew his students, he figured he knew where the seal master would turn up sooner or later. As Kakashi left, Naruto started to cry after Kakashi's exit awakened him. Sighing quietly, Sarutobi did the best parenting job that he could and tried calming Naruto. After being successful with calming the child down, Sarutobi laid the small child back inside the crib. He knew many other people would want Arashi's son and make him into what they wanted him to be, a tool of Konoha, with an attitude like the Hyugas in general, or kill him before he got out of hand. He also didn't want him adopted into a family that just wanted him so that they could further their own gain in order to be better off somehow. Therefore, with a long sigh, he put on the Hokage's coat and headed towards the village's orphanage. 6 years later, Naruto was just picking himself up off the ground after being thrown out of the place that he had to call home for the past 6 years, finally glad that he could say that he could kiss that hellhole called an orphanage goodbye. The only thing he didn't understand was why mostly everyone in the village shunned him or tried to hurt him. Sure, he did some pranks to get attention, but he didn't think that the victims of his pranks would act this angry towards him. As he was heading towards the Hokage's office to seek a place to live, the villagers started throwing words at him as usual. He made sure to recognize those people and vowed to prank them all later. Of course, this would be later on when he had a place to live. Moving along quickly, he made it to the courtyard of the Hokage Tower and started climbing the stairs that would lead to one of his few precious people. Seeing an Anbu with a bird mask, he smiled inwardly. This man was Kinomoto, Thunderbird, Rai, the older brother to his only friend, Sakura, whom he heard was at home for the moment and taking a break from her tutors, Yukito and his summoned beast, Cerberus. As Rai noticed the young blonde coming through, he moved out of the way. Before Naruto went through the door, he quickly waved at Rai, who returned the gesture. As the professor heard the door open, he put his pen down and looked towards the door and saw something that still saddened him, but knowing that Naruto hated being pitied, he quickly put that emotion aside. His eyes then went towards being curious as he waited for Naruto to speak. Seeing that he wasn't going to start the conversation, he asked, Naruto, to what do I owe this visit? As Naruto took a seat opposite of the medium-sized office area. I would like my own home, Naruto said unevenly, as his breath still came raggedly to him. I can't do that unless there is something extremely wrong with the orphanage, Naruto. I thought I've told you that before, was the Hokage's response, but it seemed that Naruto wasn't showing his defeated pout look, which meant something was different from before. What changed? He asked as his voice had a defeated tone in it. Defeated not because of Naruto's look, but because of what the village had done to the unsung protector. The owners kicked me out. It was something along the lines of, a demon can certainly fend for itself by now, or something along those lines. I've lost count as to how many things they call me by now. The Hokage frowned at this. He knew that this would probably happen, but he hoped that it didn't come to this. He thought that after making that law that no one was to speak of the Kyūbi attack in order to give Naruto a chance to live a normal life was going to help him, but he guessed it did nothing other than cause people to find other ways to abuse the boy. He knew that he was mistreated, but he didn't know it was going to turn out this bad. All right, I'll give you your own apartment on two conditions. One is that I pay for your living costs, which means I am the boss in a sense. The second condition is that you get some food into that body of yours. I will be checking in every once in a while and I expect things to be up to my expectations. But Oji-san, what makes you think that the idiots who run the food store will allow me of all people to buy anything? I doubt Sakura-chan can convince her older brother to cook meals for me every day, and besides, even if she did do that, I wouldn't want to rely on my friendship in order to get something for myself. Naruto said, making the old man sigh gently. Has the village really done this to a 6-year-old boy? Has the ignorance and fear of his beloved home driven them to cause pain to a small child to lessen their own? There is an old man and his daughter that run a small restaurant near the academy that I trust very dearly. Tell them that you will do small errands for them in exchange for meals. Their names are Asakura Tsuki and Asakura Ayame, and before you complain about not being able to train, they are near the academy, so they should have picked up on some ideas, or you could practice things that you see from the academy itself. He said as he handed him a place where he could get an apartment. Naruto took the piece of paper from his grandfather and opened it and thanked him. He knew that it was in a bad part of the neighborhood, but he couldn't complain, especially since the Hokage was the one paying. Looking at the piece of paper and then glancing up, he didn't notice the few people that were following him. Once he was near his house, and out of the way of the public's eyes, they picked up a few rocks and started to throw them at Naruto. Naruto turned around just in time to receive a fist to his stomach. Out for a stroll, demon spawn. That's very unwise, one of the villagers said as Naruto fell to the ground below him. As he fell, Naruto crumbled the piece of paper into his fist. His goal through this was to make sure that wasn't found by the people who were attacking him. If they did, he was certain that they would tear it up right in front of his eyes. As the villagers kept on kicking him, one of the attackers pulled out a small knife. I say we do the village a favor and finally kill the demon. What do you say, boys? The leader of the gang said as the others saw him and what he planned to do. The others moved out of the way for him. As the guy advanced, Naruto started to feel afraid, especially since the villagers were going farther than they usually did. As he started to black out, he saw the back of one man. He didn't know if he was there to help him or the villagers, but as he blacked out, he hoped that he was one of the few to help. Rai was heading over to the orphanage in order to get the few things that Naruto was able to call his own before heading off to the location that the Hokage gave Naruto and to himself. He figured that the only reason the Hokage had given the assignment to him is that he wouldn't kill Naruto. Hate him because of his pranks, yes, kill him, no. As he headed towards the apartment, he heard screaming coming from the alley. Fearing the worst, he did a Shushin no Jutsu and saw that Naruto was fading in and out of consciousness before falling completely into the black world. Seeing the slash on the boy's stomach as Naruto blacked out, he went into full Anbu mode as he turned to face the mob in front of him. "Which one of you started this?" he asked, his hands starting to glow with chakra. The one holding the knife gladly said that he started the attack and he expected a reward for his heroic deed for the village. "The only reward you will get is either death or a session with Ibiki. Pray for a quick death," was all that Rai said before getting in one of the Kinomoto stances for readiness, the left arm and leg out a little farther than the right, which was planted to the ground with his weight more on the right leg. "It is true then, the leftovers of the Kinomoto clan have befriended the demon, oh how the mighty have fallen," one of the villagers said. Before he could even breathe again, all four limbs went limp, as Rai just appeared where he was standing just moments ago, a smirk on his face as the man fell to the ground, still conscious and still very much alive. While this was going on in the outside world, Naruto was starting to wake up in something akin to a sewer. Noticing a small light at the end of the tunnel, he started walking towards it. Once he got towards the lighted part of his sewer, he saw a gate that had the word seal in the middle of it. As Naruto headed towards the opening gate, a face stared back at him. In shock, he lost his balance and fell backwards. At this, the person who was behind the gate started laughing, the voice having a feminine tone to it. When Naruto got back up, he saw the female in full view. Having long red hair that flowed down to her back, she looked like she was 25 and was about 5 feet 8 inches. Nestled on top of her hair were two red fox ears with peach fuzz on the inside of each, as her yellow eyes stared right at Naruto. She also had the same whiskers that adorned Naruto's face as well. She was wearing a normal red shirt with outlines of fire going down vertically on the sleeves of the shirt. She was also wearing a set of ninja pants, colored black, and a set of ninja sandals, each having a kunai within the shoes. 9 fox tails were slowly swaying around her as they either seemed to dance through the air or were content to wrap around her figure in a gently manner. "Who are you, and where are we? More importantly, am I dead?" Naruto asked as the female just giggled softly. It was not stinging or sarcastic like others, but gentle, more like Sakura-chan's laugh. "My name is Hosaki and we're in the inside of your mind, or more important, the seal that's on your stomach, and you aren't dead, but very close to it. Your friend's brother is protecting you as we speak, but right now let's just say that I'm the reason you always heal quickly. I'm also the reason you need that ability," Hosaki said as Naruto's face went through several emotions before settling on curiosity. "Hosaki-chan, don't blame yourself for my problems. Besides, anyone who gave me trouble became a victim of my pranks, as I assume you saw," Naruto said, while Hosaki just stood there in shock. She had terrorized Konoha for personal reasons and sealed within Naruto because of it, and to him it was nothing. She didn't know if she should laugh or cry at the situation. She would have loved him as a brother, she thought to herself, coming back to Naruto. "But, I'm the reason you have all these problems, Naru-kun. If it wasn't for me, you wouldn't be an orphan or have to," she started to say, but silenced as Naruto hugged her. As he did this, thoughts of adopting him went through her head and she would think on that for later. After a few minutes went by, Naruto took his hands off of her neck. "Sake-chan, that may be true, but then again, it might not be true, at least I think so. One thing I do know though, and that is I wouldn't have you as a friend," Naruto said as a small grin worked its way onto his face, and soon after, Hosaki mirrored that grin with one of her own. "I don't deserve your kindness, Naru-kun, not after what I did to Konohagakure, but thank you." What are friends for? He asked before he started to fade. Sake-chan, what's going on? Naruto asked in a panicked voice before Hosaki started to explain what was going on, hoping to calm the boy down. The person who came to help you must have taken you to the hospital and made sure you healed there with the help of some doctors. This doctor or team of doctors are trying to wake you up from your coma-like sleep. A coma? Let's see, how can I explain it? It's where you're still breathing, but you aren't moving. It's like a long sleep and most people get worried if someone slips into one. Oh, alright then, I think I understand. Naruto started to speak before he started to fade in and out quicker than before. Realizing that his time was short, Naruto made sure to ask one question that he needed to be answered. Will I be able to see you again? Yes, Naru-kun, you'll be able to see me when you're asleep, or if you're unconscious, like today. Hosaki said as Naruto finally faded out and went back into his world. Sighing to herself quietly as she focused on some of her thoughts, one thought came up in particular. That one thought was, I wonder what he'll think if he ever learns that I'm the Kyūbi no Yoko. However, she quickly shook those thoughts away thinking that Naruto wouldn't mind too much, as Naruto woke up to see Rai, Sakura and the Hokage. I'm just glad I didn't have to take on the copycat Junin, otherwise I'd have to show the true colors of my feathers, and maybe get lucky and get a Reikiri off on him, Naruto. Rai said before noticing Naruto was awake. Sakura instantly went towards her friend and hugged him gently. Naruto, are you alright? She asked with fear etched on her face. The reason she was there and not at home was because she heard the rumors about a group of villagers finally getting rid of the demon. Hearing those, she instantly ran towards the Hokage's tower and told him what she heard. When the Hokage checked on Naruto with his Tomegan no Jutsu, telescope jutsu aka his crystal ball, he saw Rai standing protectively over an unconscious Naruto and a group of either dead or unconscious civilians and some shinobi behind him. He saw Rai pick Naruto up and head towards the hospital. Grabbing his hat, he motioned for Sakura to follow him. Rai and the Hokage chuckled at Sakura's actions, thus breaking her out of her frantic mode of worrying, and she started bringing out her cards. Searching through the set of cards that she used as a medium for one of her shikigami that could help heal him, but before she could find one, the wound started closing by itself. Naruto, I've made the decision to revoke the right for you to live by yourself, especially after what happened today. However, I am placing you under Rei's care, if that's alright with you. The Hokage said as he looked towards Naruto. Naruto didn't have to be asked twice, immediately taking the offer up, and with that, the life of Uzumaki Naruto begins. Alright Naruto, we're done with taijutsu for today. Rai said before handing Naruto a bottle of water. Naruto took to training like a fish took to water. Anything that he taught the boy was easily soaked up by the blonde, although unknown to him, his friend was also helping as well during the night. Looking at the blonde in front of him, he knew that Naruto had come far from what he was just 1 year ago when he was knocking on heaven's door. He was still mad at some of the so-called medic nin, but he quickly shook the thought away. The past was in the past, dismal as it may be. Alright Naruto, break's over. Rai said as Naruto lightly groaned. Rai would not teach him any Raiden until he got the last of the 3 skills down to where he just had to do one hand seal to use them, and he still couldn't do Bunshin no Jutsu. Come on Aniki, there has to be a trick to the Bunshin no Jutsu. It's already been 1 year. Naruto said, hoping to get his sensei to teach him a new jutsu other than the 3 that the academy first taught. You're giving up. That doesn't sound like you at all Naruto. Rai said as Naruto looked at him. Although, maybe it is impossible for you to do Bunshin no Jutsu as of now, but that's why I'm going to help train you in controlling your chakra. Rai said with a grin before Naruto paled. Anytime that Rai grinned, it meant something bad was going to happen to Naruto. Do you remember the leaf training exercise Naruto-kun? Yeah, where you place a leaf on to the top of your head and make it stick there with chakra. I did that already, you know that. True, but today we're going to take it up a notch. Now before you get impatient, hear me out. You've done it with leaves on your body, but how about small stones? Rai asked as Naruto tried it with a pebble but found it more difficult to do so than with the leaves. You're noticing it's difficult. That's because the stones are heavier than leaves, so it needs more chakra to keep it sticking. Rai said before looking over to see Sakura doing the same exercise as Naruto. However, she was doing it for a different reason, trying to raise her own chakra levels by tiring herself out. Sakura was starting to have trouble breathing and it showed through her concentration as some of the rocks were starting to flux between her fingers. She kept going on, pushing herself to break through the limits that she had. Sakura, that's enough, Rai said as he noticed that Sakura was starting to have the symptoms of chakra exhaustion, but he saw that she was ignoring him. Sometimes she can be a real pain, he thought to himself before using a Shushin no Jutsu, body flicker, to appear next to her. Sakura, he shouted in a demanding tone, hoping that was all he needed to do to break her concentration, but alas, it wasn't. Before he could do anything else, she fainted. As she fainted, Naruto stopped and went to her side. Sighing as he witnessed the scene, he thought, this is the third time in the past few months. Naruto, take Sakura to her room and then you can do whatever you want. Just remember, you start the academy tomorrow. Rai said as Naruto nodded. At least he still cares for her, he thought to himself before seeing a hawk fly across the sky. Using the Shushin no Jutsu, he quickly went out of existence as he headed towards the Hokage's tower. Why does she always do this? Naruto thought to himself as he carried the young girl up the stairs and into her room. She's training just as hard as you are. Yeah, but why is she doing it? There are many reasons she could be doing it, but that is something not even I could tell you. Now then, you said you were going to show me something, right? Hosaki asked as Naruto mentally nodded to his tenet. After making sure that Sakura was under the covers and sleeping peacefully, he left her room. Quickly noticing a hasty scrawled letter from Rai saying that he had a mission in Sunagaku and if he needed to go out, to use the Henge no Jutsu transformation he showed him before. Heading back outside, Naruto checked around before quickly transforming. When the smoke cleared, Naruto appeared differently. He was now wearing a placid white shirt with the symbol of a crescent moon on the left sleeve and the back having the symbol of a moon and star interlinked and within a perfect circle. This was the Kinomoto clan's symbol. The shirt was covered by a light blue vest that had foxfire lining up and down the insides of the vest, and while the inside of the vest had the Uzumaki swirl on it, the outside of the vest had the Kinomoto's crest on it, allowing the swirl design of the Uzumaki clan to go unnoticed. His once blonde and unruly hair was changed to a short, light brown color. He was wearing a pair of darker blue pants, heading down to where each leg ended right before the black boots he wore started. The pants had several pockets for holding scrolls and other ninja material and a small set of pockets for kunai and shuriken. I thought Rai gave you a sword with that. Kiba no Ukami, Wolf's Fang, right? He did, but I don't need it right now. Naruto thought, to which Hosaki just sighed. She hoped he listened to when Rai told him never to leave his guard down. Now then, all we need is a male to test it. Test what? Watch and you'll see, Sake-chan. Naruto thought to her before cutting the link off before leaving the house as well, intentions of going to his job and running a few errands for his boss. He didn't mind being a delivery boy for the old man and his daughter, especially since they gave him free food whenever he came in, so it was all good. Ah nah, Soren, good timing, I was just about to call you, Tsuki said, glad to see Naruto still alive for at least another day. Someone from the Uchiha clan wanted a set of medium rare steak and a chicken salad. If you don't mind, he started to say, but before he could finish, Naruto already grabbed the packaged food and headed off to that area. He shook his head in an amused fashion as the boy went off into the distance. While the Uchiha clan might be the pride of Konoha for being the village's personal police protection, not every Uchiha in the police force was honest, and a few of them still held a grudge for the Hyuga clan, and the heir of the Hyuga clan just happened to be lost within their complex. Next time we go shopping when it's not as crowded, Hinata thought to herself as she looked throughout the complex for her younger sister. She has to be here somewhere, the girl thought aloud as she spotted an Uchiha up in the distance. Quickly hiding in an alleyway, she hoped that person didn't see her. Her father told her how some of the Uchihas had an intense hatred for the Hyuga clan. Most weren't on the police force, but there were others. Luck wasn't on her side as an Uchiha stepped out of one of the houses and came closer to the area where Hinata was standing, who was holding her breath. I know you're out there. If you come out now, I'll only charge you with trespassing, he said as Hinata only inched further into the darkness, hoping that she could blend into it. However, this was not to be the case as the Uchiha came closer to Hinata's position. Seeing the pale eyes, he immediately growled and picked a kunai out of its resting place, but before he could do anything, she screamed in panic. Hearing a scream come from an alleyway a little further down the path, Naruto listened for something else, but when nothing did, he decided to check it out. If he didn't, his conscience would bother him. Putting the order down so it wouldn't become a problem, Naruto headed into darkened dead end, and even though it was dark, he could make out a male heading towards a defenseless female. Quickly using a shushin, Naruto appeared in between the two. Before the Uchiha could sneeze, Naruto had punched the man away from Hinata and then went after him before Hinata could even ask his name. The Uchiha quickly did a few hand seals before using Kaden Gokaku no Jutsu fire style. Great fireball technique, but the mysterious protector just grinned before using Kawarimi no Jutsu, substitution technique, and a burnt log was in the place where the warrior was just a few minutes before. Looking around quickly, the Uchiha paled as he heard a voice above him. So, you like picking on girls, do you? Take this, Oiruku no Jutsu. Technique, Naruto shouted as he transformed into a buxom babe with red-length hair that was up in a ponytail. This ponytail went down to rest comfortably on the lower half of her back, and smoke was covering her more feminine parts as the Uchiha flew back from the blood that shot out of his nose. Dispelling the Oiruku, Naruto went after the Uchiha, and skidded just a kunai brushed past him. Twisting at the hips to dodge the blade, the boy grabbed it and using his momentum from the dodge turned around and tossed the kunai back at the man. The kunai sailed through the air and pierced the man's hand, making it stick to the wall. Damn you! The Uchiha yelled out in pain, trying to reach and pull the kunai out of his hand. However, the man could not reach the offending weapon and just clung there desperately trying to do something in order to get it out as the boy came closer to him. Stay away! He yelled in fear. I will, on one condition. If you ever see her in this area again, you do not harm her. If I hear you have or paid someone to do so, I will find you and I will kill you, he said coldly, as Rai instructed him before. Seeing that the man nodded, he decided to be a little merciful and found the food that he was supposed to deliver and gave it to the man. I'm not letting you down, but if you can eat with one hand, this food is for you. Hopefully someone will come around, Naruto said as he went back towards the girl only to see her unconscious with a red tint on her cheeks. Chuckling at how cute she looked like that, Naruto picked her up. Now all I need to do is find out where she lives. Why not just take her home with us? What? I can't do that. Sakura-chan would kill me. But if you tell her first, she'll understand. If you say so, Naruto thought as he picked up the girl and positioned her on his back before heading to Ichiraku, and then back home. Sakura woke up and noticed that she was in her room and in her bed. I must have passed out again. Am I always going to be a burden to Naru-kun? She asked herself before shaking the thought out of her head. Getting out of the bed, she took a shower before heading downstairs and noticed the note. Picking it up, she noticed a small arrow on the bottom of the note. Flipping it over, she noticed that Rai included a PS for Sakura. When you wake up, don't do any more training. A look of annoyance crossed her face as she read that. She knew that training right now would not be beneficial for her health. A growl emanated from her stomach as the girl blushed. Looking through the kitchen to find something to eat, Sakura just found enough ingredients for a peanut butter sandwich before she heard someone outside the front door. Getting up slowly, she picked up a pan and eased herself to the front door, just in case, but put it down once seeing who it was. It was Naruto, and for some reason, he was having trouble unlocking the door. Sakura put her makeshift weapon down and unlocked the door for him, and saw why Naruto was having trouble with the door. On his back was one Hyuga Hinata passed out with a small blush on her cheeks. Sorry Sakura-chan, she was in trouble and I couldn't take her to her house because then my cover would be blown. Sighing as she looked at the duo, she only shook her head at what she saw. I assume you want her to spend the night then? She asked as he nodded, not knowing what Sakura would do. Sighing again, Sakura told Naruto to put Hinata in her room for the time being. Thanking her for understanding, Naruto headed up the stairs carefully, making sure that Hinata didn't wake up. As he put the covers around the girl, Hinata snuggled in pleasure of being warm. Naruto chuckled lightly at that. Closing the door as softly as possible, the boy went back downstairs. You know, you can release the jutsu now, Sakura said as Naruto looked at her sheepishly and undid the hinge. After he did so, Sakura looked at him for a second before telling him that he should get some sleep himself. If Hinata woke up before morning came, she would come and get him. Naruto nodded and headed up the stairs. Sakura went back to the front door and locked it, picking up the pan and returning it back to the kitchen before also going up the stairs and into her bedroom. Now, where am I going to sleep? Sakura thought to herself before remembering that she had a spare blanket in her closet. Before she fell asleep, Sakura's mind fluttered throughout everything that happened during the day, before sighing and going to sleep. Tomorrow would be hectic was the last thought that crossed her mind before she drifted off. Hinata woke up warm and content, however, she did not know where she was, and that thought concerned her. Looking around her surroundings, she noticed a small alarm clock with chakra powering it and making it light up with a touch of a button. Pushing the button in, Hinata watched the alarm clock emit a low amount of light, enough for her to make out the time of 3 o'clock. It's 3 o'clock in the morning. Father must be worried and annoyed, she thought to herself as she sighed. Well, the least I can do is thank whoever saved me last night when he wakes up, Hinata thought to herself, finally realizing that there was someone else in the room as well. Wondering who it was, she turned the clock on the stand to illuminate the person sleeping on the floor. It's Sakura-chan, she thought to herself before pushing the button again, deactivating the chakra that was stored into the clock. As she settled back into the bed that was given to her, all Hinata could think about was her rescuer, and as sleep reclaimed her, questions were still trying to invade her mind. Hearing the alarm clock ringing, Sakura moved her arm to the left as usual in order to turn the annoying thing off. However, all she hit was the floor. Grumbling as she got off the floor, she went to the offending object to see Hinata also looking for the offending object. On the other side Hinata, Sakura said as Hinata turned it off and looked at Sakura. Sakura, why am I in your room? I'll answer your question if you answer mine first. What do you remember last? Someone coming to save me from an Uchiha member who hates the Hyugas, other than that, I don't remember. Alright then, Sakura started, sighing before continuing, we both know that Naruto is hated for some reason or another and as such, he uses a henge whenever he goes out. In his henge form, his name is Soren. He came in last night with you passed out on his back. Sakura finished as she noticed the blush on Hinata's cheeks. He did all that, all for me. Yeah, how he did it though you'd have to ask him. Anyways, we have to get ready for school. You can have the shower first, and I bet you've been in those clothes longer than usual. Sakura said as Hinata nodded and headed to the shower. A few minutes later, Hinata was dressed in some of Sakura's clothes as Sakura also went to take a shower. Naruto was awake before the two girls were, remembering that he brought Hinata to his house. Sighing, he took one more look at the cereals that Rai bought with his salary before heading to the fridge and getting out some eggs and bacon. Now while Naruto wasn't the best chef in the world, or in the Kinomoto residence for that matter, Sakura did teach him how to cook when he was living in the orphanage, just in case he was going to live by himself one day. Guess all that training with Saku-chan did pay off, just not the way we intended to, Naruto thought as he heard a slight chuckle from his imaginary friend, as he got the necessary pans out and got them prepared for his meal. He noticed that Hinata was the one that came down first. Naru-kun, Hinata asked shyly, almost wanting to poke her fingers together as usual. Yes. Thank you. It was no problem. Hinata. Hyuga Hinata. Thanks. Anyways, as I was saying, it was no problem Hinata. Besides, they tended to give me the most beatings when I was out of that orphanage, so I know they can be annoying idiots, he started saying as he heard Hinata laugh. Checking over the eggs and bacon, he started to scramble them, adding pepper into the eggs as he kept an eye on them. Once it was done, he turned the burners off and got 2 plates, and as he gave Hinata her own plate, Sakura came down dressed as well and got her own plate of eggs and bacon. Guess my lessons paid off in the end. Yeah, Naruto responded in an offhand manner as he gathered his things for the first day of school. Sakura did the same, but Hinata was unlucky, seeing as her school bag was at the Hyuga complex. Seeing her downcast look, Naruto cheered her up by saying, maybe we can explain what happened last night to the teacher, maybe he or she will understand. As the 3 of them headed out, Naruto used the Henge no Jutsu and soon after, Soren was standing in Naruto's place. Why you really don't have to do that Naruto-kun. I know, but Rai says it's for my own good, for now at least. When I get out of the academy and become a real shinobi, I don't have to use it if I don't want to. Now let's get going. I for one would not want to deal with Aniki because we were late on the first day of school, Naruto said as he headed off with the 2 girls following him shortly thereafter. As the 3 headed into the school grounds, they heard the bell just started to ring. As everyone started filing into the building, Naruto stood back for a few seconds and undid his henge. Heading inside, the doors closed around the boy as he quickly found his class and slid into a seat next to Sakura just to hear the introduction of their senseis. Hello everyone, I am Yumino Iruka and this is my assistant, Ikasama Trickery Mizuki. I would like to welcome you all to the first day of school, and the start of your life. Iruka said. 4 years quickly passed for the 2 friends and among that time, each of them made separate friends, as their own bond of friendship grew stronger. However, people saw this as something more than what it was and rumors spread about the 2 being more than just friends. Then again, when you hang out a lot and are in the same house. While Sakura was training with her cards and other stuff with Rei's friend Yukito, Rai took it upon himself to make sure he was physically active and part of the top 3 of the class. Hosaki also helped in this way, imparting her vast amount of knowledge to the boy via the link the 2 had established. However, this did not come without a price as the times when Naruto came to the seal within his stomach meant that he got little to no sleep, but then again, nothing in life was free. However, no matter what Rai did to threaten the boy, Naruto kept his prankster abilities in prime condition. Although Naruto usually went to bed bruised and tired, Rai actually thought some of his pranks were ingenious, and the fact that almost no one was able to catch him, it made him somewhat proud and somewhat sad at the same time. However, what Naruto just did could not be seen as humorous, especially if he just painted all faces on the Hokage monument. The sad thing was that no one caught him in the act and the sun was out and shining. Geez, if Naruto is able to do this in broad daylight, I wonder what would happen at night. Rai thought to himself as he headed after Naruto, hoping that he could get to him before Iruka, the Chunin teacher who somehow was always able to find and capture Naruto most of the time after pulling a more serious prank. What's the score again? 200 to 199 with him winning. Rai thought to himself before he and other shinobi raced after the blonde academy student. Naruto was having the time of his life, even though he was currently running away from Chunin and other ranked shinobi. He knew what he did was wrong, but he liked the fact that he was able to do it without anyone noticing him until he finished, which is why he was currently running. Ha! None of you could do that, can you? I can, since I'm the greatest. Naruto shouted at the trailing shinobi. Jumping from rooftop to rooftop, he kept looking back to make sure that his pursuers were having a hard time keeping up with him. However, it seemed to be that Naruto's famous lucky streak was about to take a small leave of absence as he jumped to the next rooftop, bumping into a girl just a bit older than he was. I'm sorry, he said before helping the girl up. It's no problem, she started to say, but waited for him to tell her his name. Naruto. Uzumaki Naruto, Naruto said, before he cast his eyes downward, probably because now that she knew his name, she wouldn't want to be anywhere near him. However, the unpredictable shinobi was surprised when she repeated her statement and added his name to it. Grinning, he asked the young beauty what her name was. My name is Gabriella, Uchiha Gabriella, and it's a pleasure to meet you Naruto-san, she said before he noticed the others catching up to him. Well Gabriella-chan, I hate to end our meeting so soon, but I have to run, he said before starting to dash across the rooftops once more. Giggling slightly at the scene, she went back to what she was doing, still wondering why her Sharingan had yet activated itself, but she would worry about that later as she saw the yellow-haired boy run off into the distance. She sighed as she stopped her own training, since her father wanted to see her for something. Jumping down from the rooftops to the ground, he noticed that his pursuers gained quite some ground on him. Noticing that he was near a fence, he pulled out a cloak and hid under it, also activating the seal that created the illusion that he kept going past the fence. I may not be able to use Bunshin, but this cloak has the seal to create it, he thought to himself as he grinned before taking it down and grinning, success at not getting caught. That girl seemed nice, I hope her clan doesn't make trouble for her because of me, Naruto thought before someone grabbed him by the hem of his jacket. Hello Naruto, out for a stroll? Rai asked, as he looked straight into the eyes of the unofficial king of pranksters. Naruto gulped before slowly wondering how to get out of this situation. What Naruto didn't see was that behind Rai's mask, said person was grinning because it was now tied at 200 apiece. Iruka then showed up before looking at the scene and scowling, coming to the same conclusion. Rai and Iruka were tied with the little game that they had. I am sorry that you had to do this yet again Rai-san. I'll take over from here, a young Chunin with a battle scar running across the bridge of his nose spoke up. This young man was Yumino Iruka, Chunin of Konoha and the academy teacher of Naruto's class. Turning to look at Naruto, he looked with a small pang of disappointment towards Naruto. Today is the last day before the exams Naruto, and yet, you willingly choose to participate in this juvenile activity. Listen here Naruto, I'm not trying to be harsh or anything, and while you've grown in the last few years Naruto, that doesn't mean you automatically pass. He's right you know. Even you need to take tomorrow seriously, especially since you know I'm not going to help you with the test, just like any others. I still don't like learning these facts, nor do I see the point of them, Naruto thought to his friend as he also listened to Iruka's speech, nodding every few seconds. Seeing that Rai had used Shushin no Jutsu to leave the area and return to the Hokage Tower. Now then, let's go back to class, Iruka said as he and Naruto disappeared out of the area. Overall, Kinomoto Sakura was bored. Sighing quietly at Naruto's absence, Sakura quietly brought out a book that she was currently reading when Iruka didn't show up, the assignment written on the board already completed. Therefore, when the door opened and Iruka walked in with a tied-up Naruto, Sakura sat up intrigued. Not often was it that Iruka brought in Naruto like that, he must have done something extremely stupid to warrant this humiliation. I wonder what he did, so caught up in her thoughts she almost didn't hear Iruka's instructions. We're going to have a review test for the Henge no Jutsu. Those who already passed will have to line up as well. Iruka shouted, making some people look at him if he grew another head. As the class lined up, several people shot Naruto a dirty look as they lined up. Several people came and went, before it was Sakura's turn. Kinomoto Sakura going, henge. Receiving a nod from Iruka at the perfect activation of the jutsu, Sakura dispelled it and grinned. She cringed inwardly before looking over towards the Uchiha. She didn't like him per se, but it was easier to pretend that she did, especially since she was able to stay close with her childhood friend, Yamanaka Ino. She was just glad that Naruto knew it was just an act, because Sasuke and Naruto were rivals, even though it was one-sided. She waited to see what Naruto would do, because every time he was caught, he would get revenge somehow before being punished again, and this time would be no exception. And as Naruto's full name was called, the boy started walking up there, hiding an evil grin that only spoke one thing: mischief was about to happen. Hinata sighed after she came back to her place in line. She was worried that she would screw up the jutsu, but she was glad when she didn't. Looking over to Sakura, she remembered the fact of what happened before. Sighing quietly to herself, she looked up in interest as she saw Naruto head up to the front of the class. Good luck, Naruto-kun, she whispered to herself, knowing quite well that he could take care of himself, especially after that event 4 years ago. Speaking of those events, when her cousin was not on a mission, Hinata asked Neji for training or a spar. Usually it was a spar, but Neji used some advanced Hyuga jutsus among some of the own he created over the years. After reading Naruto's body language, she silently activated her bloodline limit and waited. She noticed that Naruto was putting too much chakra into the jutsu. Hinata looked onwards towards Naruto just before hearing the boy say, henge, and a beautiful red-haired female was standing in Naruto's place. However, since Hinata activated her Byakugan, she could see what no one else did, what was underneath the smoke. Unfortunately, this sight caused the young Hyuga heiress to faint from the blood that quickly rushed to her face. What do you think of my original technique, sensei? I call it the Oiruka no Jutsu technique, Naruto said as he watched Iruka fall back and quickly move his nose up so as to not lose any more blood as he quickly grabbed a tissue and ripped it up, jabbing the 2 pieces up into his nose. After that was done and Naruto released the jutsu, Iruka yelled at the boy for creating such a stupid skill, but Naruto just laughed. Iruka sighed, as he knew it wasn't going to end well for him, but he didn't think that Naruto would do something that perverse. Sighing again, Iruka ended class early, just as all the other teachers did today. This way, each teacher could work on the written portion of the exam, and making sure that none of the other classes would impose on one another. However, for Iruka, that would take even longer since he had to deal with one of his students first. Naruto, stay here for a moment, Iruka said before Naruto could head out the door with the few friends he had. Cringing at what he knew was going to happen, Naruto waved goodbye to the friends he made over the years. See you guys later, was all that Naruto said with a brave face before they left, turning to see Iruka looking at him in a disapproving way. You and I have much to talk about, Naruto, Iruka said before Naruto paled at the information. Even though Sakura knew about the Oiruka no Jutsu, she still didn't like the fact that she helped create the technique, but she could see the benefits of it. That idiot, I can't believe he did that in class. Sakura thought to herself as she was heading down the street with the rest of her friends, barely hearing the conversations that were going on. Sakura, are you all right? Ino asked as she waved a hand in front of her friend's face. Sakura scowled and batted the hand away from her face, telling Ino that she was fine, just a little distracted. Distracted by your Naru-kun? Ino asked with a grin and smirk as Sakura blushed before she quickly denied Ino's claims. Then why are you blushing? The blonde girl asked as Sakura replied that they were just friends and dared Ino to challenge that claim, which Ino wisely didn't. Seeing Hinata, Ino and her other friends headed quickly for their respective homes, Sakura chuckled lightly at the situation, especially since she noticed the glares coming from Hinata. Who knew she liked Naruto that bad, she thought to herself as she headed home, ignoring the whispers and glares by the villagers. It was stupid really, especially when Rai would only tell her that she couldn't know why Naruto, and to some extent, herself, were hated by most of the villagers. They knew not to do anything unless they wanted a painful visit through either the maze and illusion cards or a meeting with an annoyed Rai. Therefore, the idiots of the village just settled on glaring at the girl. I wonder what Naruto is doing right now, Sakura thought to herself as she let her feet take her towards wherever they guided her. Looking up a few moments, she noticed that she was in front of the Hokage monument, and saw two specks on top of it. Assuming that was Iruka and Naruto, she started the climb up towards the monument. Naruto sneezed and cursed as another small amount of water went over his nose. Ever since Iruka brought him here, the teacher was making sure that Naruto was completing his punishment. Hosaki was also angry with the blonde-haired boy. If he was going to do a prank, then he should be able to get away with it. Making sure not to take over too much chakra, she used her Yuki demon energy to manipulate some of his chakra to wait. As Naruto was wiping the sweat off his brow, he noticed his limbs were a little heavier. Trying to see what was happening, he noticed Hosaki was oddly quiet. Sighing, he quickly went back to work, not wanting to be scolded by Iruka once again. I wish Sakura-chan were here, he thought to himself, before looking up once again, seeing two mops of brown hair. Sakura-chan, what are you doing here? I honestly don't know. Sakura said as Naruto chuckled at her response, but soon stopped as Sakura got a smirk on her face. Sensei, you don't mind if I help Naruto stay cool, do you? She asked before Iruka said that he didn't care, having a gut feeling that he was going to get wet if he refused. Taking out a card quickly, she channeled chakra into it as the card disappeared, and in its place was a small cloud, a little girl standing on top of it. Rain. Naruto looks a little dry, I think he needs a little shower, she said while grinning as the cloud went from where Sakura was and headed towards Naruto. A few seconds later, the sound of raindrops fell through the air before hearing a loud yell coming from the boy. Hey! Naruto shouted at the sudden shower. Looking up to see Sakura and Iruka chuckling lightly at the scene, he saw the cloud faintly before it changed back into its former card. If you don't mind, can I wait here until Naruto finishes up? Iruka didn't mind a bit and told the girl as such. Sitting down, they both watched as Naruto worked on cleaning up his mess. Iruka rested on the tree overlooking as he heard the small talk between Sakura and Naruto. She really has been a good influence on Naruto, he thought to himself as he got an idea. Getting up, he looked over the edge and looked at what Naruto was doing. Seeing that he was almost done, he grinned. Hey Naruto, what? Once you finish up, I'll take you and Sakura out for a bowl of ramen. How does that? Iruka didn't get to finish as Naruto was quickly by his side, sprouting off something about ramen. Sakura giggled at his antics before agreeing with their sensei. As the three headed down, Iruka smiled fondly at the two beside him. If only, he thought to himself before mentally shaking his head. The past was in the past, better to leave it there. Three unusual travelers were approaching the Ichiraku ramen bar as Tuki and Ayame were settling down. Even though the supposed demon brat came and ate there, the place still made good ramen and as such, was still a good place for many citizens to eat, as long as Naruto wasn't around. Naruto was about to use the henge when Sakura shook her head. Iruka saw this going on, but didn't say anything about it. Besides, what happens between friends outside of class was not his business, especially with students that were soon to be graduating. As the three of them headed inside, the active and free atmosphere at the bar became tense as several people left their ramen and some money on the table. In the hurry to get out, they did not care about their change. Iruka noticed this and silently sighed to himself. After they each ordered a bowl of ramen, Iruka turned to Naruto. Naruto-kun, why did you vandalize such a place? Do you realize what that place is? It's a place of where great men are recognized, the four Hokage of this village. Naruto turned towards Iruka and nodded, getting serious. I know who they are, Iruka-sensei. Those faces represent the Hokage that have protected Konoha and are known throughout this land as the best shinobi of their time. If I become Hokage myself, then people would have to stop putting me down, at least that's how I see it, he said as their ramen came. The three of them ate in silence, and as they finished, Naruto asked Iruka one more question. Sensei. Yeah, Naruto. Turning to the left in order to face his sensei, he clasped his hands in a pleading fashion. Can I wear your Konoha Hitai forehead protector? Please. This. He asked as he pointed to the headband that he wore. Sorry, but I can't do that. This is proof that you graduated from the academy and have become a real ninja. I'm sure you'll get yours tomorrow, Naruto-kun, you as well, Sakura-chan. Iruka said before laughing at Naruto pouting and turning away from him. Iruka got his wallet out, but Tsuki waved him off, saying that they got enough money from the customers who left because Naruto came in. Chuckling lightly, Iruka put away his wallet and the three got up and left the establishment, Iruka heading to his apartment to get the paperwork ready for exams and Naruto and Sakura to go home and sleep for them. Letting the two of them in, Naruto took off his shoes as Sakura did the same. Yawning, Naruto told Sakura to head upstairs and that he would lock up. Nodding, Sakura did exactly that as she headed towards her room, Naruto following suit after he locked the door behind him. Yawning, he too made it up the stairs before opening the door to his room and fell on his stomach, quickly falling asleep. When he opened his eyes, he noticed that he was in a meadow. Hosaki looked at him with a look of amusement on her face as he looked up to see her. Those were good pranks, Naru-kun. Unfortunately, you were caught, a crime in Kitsune standards, which was why you were punished. She said as Naruto nodded. Now then, time for a final review, since you know I will not help you on the test. Flashback. The first time that Naruto willingly went into his mindscape, he noticed that Hosaki was behind a cage and that the place was like a sewer. Heading towards the center of the place, he noticed that the smell was starting to get worse and worse. Crinkling his nose, as he got closer to the cage, he wondered if there was a way to change this, and hearing a chuckle come from beyond the cage, Hosaki came up to the bars. We are in your mind, so it should be easy for you to change it, she said as he looked on curiously. How? Just think it and it will happen, or at least I think that will work. Alright, he said as he closed his eyes, envisioning something that wasn't anything like a sewer. When he opened his eyes, he was staring at a lush green meadow, but yet, the cage doors were still in place and he noticed Hosaki starting silently tearing up as she was being tortured by the scenery in front of him. Screwing his eyes shut again, he thought hard about one thing and one thing only, letting the fox woman inside the bars outside of them, but still stuck to him via the seal that was placed on his stomach. Opening his eyes once again, he saw the cage was gone, but there was something new about her now. While she was still wearing the same clothes that she did when he first met her, she now had 3 pieces of jewelry on her body. The first one on her left wrist was a bracelet that fitted to her body perfectly, but gave it enough room for it to slide up or down the arm, but it could only be removed by Naruto. The bracelet had several lapis lazuli embedded into it, forming the kanji for water. Another bracelet was set on her right wrist, a set of jade gemstones set into it, marking out the symbol for wind. The last new piece of jewelry was a necklace. In the middle of the jewelry was a piece of topaz. The necklace had 3 spikes placed in a pattern of 45 degrees, 90 degrees and then another spike at another 45 degrees. Now then, I've looked through your memories, and I found that no one really taught you properly, except for that dolphin, your current teacher. If you let me, I can create a classroom and teach you the basics that you taught yourself and had Rai help you when he could. What do you think, Naru-kun? I would like that, Hosaki-sensei. End flashback. Any more questions, Naru-kun? Hosaki asked. As she looked at Naruto, seeing him nod in the negative, she created a bed for the boy and let him lie down on it. Soon, his eyes closed and he was in dreamland. I wonder what he's dreaming about, the fox demoness thought to herself, before she headed to dreamland herself. Tomorrow would be an interesting day. Hearing his alarm clock start ringing, he tried desperately to find the off button. However, after a few seconds of not finding the small button, he smashed the top of the clock with a flat palm and finally the clock stopped making its annoying noise. Mumbling to himself about how he'd outlaw alarm clocks when he became Hokage, Naruto sighed as he got out of bed and he went to his dresser to grab a few clothes as he made towards the shower. Noticing that it was free, he grinned. Usually, Sakura woke up earlier than him and used almost all of the hot water. Naruto went into the shower and turned the water on, quietly humming a song. Using as little water as possible, Naruto quickly cleaned himself up, toweled off and got dressed in a white shirt with black shinobi pants. He finished it off with an orange vest. Heading downstairs, he heard movement coming from Sakura's bedroom. Finishing his breakfast, Naruto waited for Sakura to come down as well. Wearing a normal set of clothes, a pair of jeans with a phoenix motif on the back of the pockets, and a red-pink plain shirt, she preferred to wear a set of shinobi-style boots whereas Naruto had sandals on. As they both left the house, butterflies were going through Naruto and Sakura's stomachs. As they headed past the Yamanaka's flower shop, Ino walked out the door in her usual attire, which contained of a purple skirt with a matching top. Noticing the boy, Ino smirked. "Hey there Sakura, Naruto," she said before heading over to Naruto and gave him a small hug. Glaring at the blonde girl, Sakura thought about using one of her cards, but she thought better of it. Ino only did this because she knew it annoyed her. After the usual hug, Ino decided to do something a little different. Usually she just walked with them afterwards, but today, Ino gave him a kiss on the cheek, for good luck she said. Sakura's glare intensified and she could only hope that she'd get to spar her power and fight in for a workout. After a few minutes, the trio arrived at the front grounds of the school, Sakura still glaring at Ino for the stunt that she pulled. Trying to calm her down, Naruto followed suit, heading into the building behind the two girls. A few minutes later, Iruka entered the classroom with a packet of papers in his hand. Mizuki was behind him, carrying a simple clipboard. After several seconds of trying to get the student's attention, Iruka sighed before doing a few hand seals and activated his special genjutsu, causing a small amount of killer intent to show itself in the form of a demon head, which caused the student's quiet immediately. Coughing to get the student's attention, he started to speak. "Over the past 4 years, you have all grown in leaps and bounds from the first day that you entered. The graduation exam will have 3 parts. The first part, which I am about to distribute, is a paper test consisting of several questions and you will have 1 hour to complete them. Any unanswered questions will be considered incorrect and marked as such. After that, Mizuki here will take you outside for sparring and the both of us will finish in here with the 3 jutsus that we have shown you throughout the year. If you have a variant of any of these 3 techniques, you may do them if you so choose." Iruka then started handing out the tests, making sure that everyone in the class received a paper. "Now then, you all have 1 hour to complete this exam. I wish you all the best of luck, begin." Naruto turned the paper around, looked at each of the questions before taking a pencil, and started the test. The questions were hard for a normal student unless he or she studied, but Naruto was far from a normal student and was able to get past several of the questions. Raising an eyebrow at one of the questions, he passed it before going on to finish the questions. Once he finished the test, he went back to the one question he passed. "How did the Yondaime Hokage kill the Kyūbi no Yoko?" Sake-chan said that it was hard to kill a demon, but she told me that the Yondaime, he thought to himself, before shrugging and putting down the answer, the Yondaime Hokage defeated the Kyūbi no Yoko by summoning the boss Toad Gamabunta and used the Shiki Fuin. Once that was done, he turned his paper over and looked at the time. Seeing that he still had time to kill, he put his hands on his desk and his head down on them, wishing that he paid heed to Sake-chan's advice. After the hour was up, Iruka notified the class as such, and followed the children outside to where Mizuki was standing, waiting for the children. Once Mizuki notified that they were all there, Iruka went back inside to start grading the written portion of the test. Now that we have tested your minds, it is time to test your body. A good mind is a great tool to have, but without a good body to protect it, Mizuki stated before letting it hang. Now then, it will be boys versus boys and girls versus the girls. Now then, since there is an odd amount of girls, there will be 3 girls doing a free-for-all. Now then, when I call your names, the 2 of you will step forward and the rest of you will step back and give them room as normal. I will be the referee and I will stop after either 30 seconds or up or someone becomes unconscious. Since this is only a spar, there will be no killing. Other than that, you may use whatever is at your arsenal. Time passed as the girls from the class each came and passed, all except for 3 girls. Alright then, Kinomoto Sakura, Yamanaka Ino, and Hyuga Hinata. At this the 3 girls grinned. Hinata wanted to hurt her rival for her Naruto-kun and Sakura wanted to get some revenge on Ino for the stunt that she pulled. Before anyone could attack, Sakura quickly pushed Chakra into the deck that was by her side, activating the 2 cards that she wanted instantly. While it was harder for her to do it this way, it also made it so they weren't destroyed by a kunai or shuriken. However, while she was activating them, Hinata got a strike to one of her arms, making her lose concentration. As such, the cards that she was trying to activate weren't going to have as much power in them. However, the fight and the power cards were still active, and as such, Sakura started to move quickly. I can't use more than 2 right now and my body can't take this pressure too long, Sakura thought to herself as she weaved away from Hinata's palm strike and ducked under a kick. Right now, Sakura's greatest weakness was her speed, and both Ino and Hinata were using that to their advantage. However, due to the fight's experience, Sakura still had no damage. It's going to be risky, she thought to herself before jumping back and getting some distance between the 2. Creating a set of bushin, Sakura and the clones rushed towards the 2 combatants, but right before the trio could attack, Mizuki ended the match due to the time being up. However, the ending stance showed that Sakura would have attacked Ino with a reverse punch, and combined with the power, the guess of how strong the kunoichi was unknown. However, Hinata's palm was millimeters away from Sakura's stomach. Ino, on the other hand, had 3 kunai towards the base of Hinata's neck. Therefore, Mizuki determined the match as a draw. After the boys sparred, Mizuki watched on, making notes on his clipboard after each sparring match. I hate to say it but the demon whore is good, at least with her cards. I wonder what she's like without them, he thought to himself as he remembered the draw that the 3 had. Noticing that the spar was done, he called the last 2 remaining names. Uchiha Sasuke, Uzumaki Naruto, it is your turn. After this, we will head back inside and take a small break. Now then, begin, he said as he jumped back as Sasuke ran forward towards the blonde male. Naruto dodged it and threw a kunai, tied to ninja wire. Dodging out of the way, Sasuke didn't expect the wire from the idiot and tripped on it as he was running towards Naruto. The aforementioned blonde pulled back on the wire, but Sasuke saw it and jumped over it, running into a punch. Stumbling back, Sasuke barely had time to duck under a kick, but before Naruto could bring the leg down, Sasuke was able to whip his leg out and kick the leg that was supporting most of Naruto's weight. With his balance disrupted, Naruto used the Kawarimi no Jutsu, body replacement technique, and reappeared on top of a tree. A dead branch was in the place where he would have been. Throwing a shuriken at his opponent, he then jumped down and pushed off the tree, landing directly on his feet. Sasuke jumped over the shuriken and started creating hand seals for the Kaiden. Gokaku no Jutsu, fire release. Great fireball technique, however, he wasn't able to finish it as he got a fist in the face. Falling back, Sasuke hastily got up and threw a kunai on the advancing Naruto. Naruto swatted the kunai with a kunai of his own and threw it back, and then threw his own, making it arc upwards. Sasuke jumped over the first kunai, however he didn't see the second one coming until it was mere seconds away from hitting him. Hastily using Kawarimi, Sasuke replaced himself with a log and he was glad he did so. If he hadn't, that kunai would have hurt badly. When the log fell to the ground, the kunai hit the log at the exact place that Sasuke's genital area was. Alright, time, Mizuki stated as the two got out of their stances. Winner, Sasuke. What? Naruto shouted out as Mizuki explained. Naruto, before we started, I explicitly said no killing blows. The kunai that you last used would have killed Sasuke if he didn't use Kawarimi, and as such, you are disqualified and will be getting low marks. I pray you do well in the jutsu portion, Naruto, you'll need it, Mizuki said before he led them all back inside to where Iruka was waiting. Now that we have both separately tested your mind and body, we will now both test your skills. In the next room are your shinobi proters, and after we see your skill in the Kawarimi no Jutsu, the Henge no Jutsu, and the Bunshin no Jutsu, you will receive 1 if you pass. If you do not, you can either wait until next year or take another full exam at the end of the school year. Iruka said as Mizuki nodded and continued. Now then, we will each call you in by name, and at that time you will come into the adjacent room. If satisfactory, you will pass your exam and graduate. If not, then we will see you next year. Uzumaki Naruto, Mizuki said, hating every syllable of the name as he kept the door open for the demon brat. Once he was inside, he moved away from the door as it slowly swung shut by itself. As Mizuki walked behind Naruto to his place in front of the room, Naruto stood there. You may begin whenever you are ready, Naruto, Iruka said as both teachers waited and watched the young man. He gathered chakra before doing the first jutsu, perfectly assuming the image of Iruka. Iruka grinned at that, and soon after, Naruto let go of the Henge no Jutsu. Iruka-sensei, Mizuki-sensei, do you think it's possible to throw a kunai or shuriken at me so I can use the Kawarimi no Jutsu? I'm sorry, Naruto-san, but we can't endanger the students. You will have to do it without the danger incentive. Iruka said as Naruto nodded, before focusing on his chakra. Soon after, Naruto disappeared in a puff of smoke as he appeared where the desk was, and the desk was where he was. Grinning a little, the teachers only sighed. Prankster Uzumaki Naruto struck again. I'm glad we didn't throw a kunai or shuriken, Iruka thought to himself as he waited for Naruto to complete the exam by doing the Bunshin no Jutsu, clone technique, and as Naruto gathered chakra, he saw that he was expelling too much chakra for the jutsu. Once saying the jutsu, smoke appeared and a clone appeared. However, this clone was barely alive and pale, just about ready to pass out. I'm sorry, Naruto, but with only 2 out of the 3 jutsus, I cannot pass you. Failing this, and the physical portion of the test, I cannot pass you for the year. I'm sorry, Naruto. Wait a second, Iruka-san. He did pass the written portion. In addition, he did create a clone after all. I'm sorry, Mizuki-san, if Naruto passed both tests before and still failed at creating the Bunshin no Jutsu, then maybe. However, he didn't, and thus I can't pass him. Iruka said as Naruto ran out of the classrooms, tears starting to spill. Naruto-kun. Naru-kun. Iruka sighed as he and his partner came out of the classroom with one hitai still in his hand. It was supposed to be for Naruto. Sighing, he addressed the class. Everyone, I am glad to say that you are now at the beginning of your shinobi and kunoichi careers. In 2 weeks' time, I want you back here again so I can give you your squad members and Jonin leader. Once again, congratulations. You're all dismissed, he said, happy and yet at the same time, sad. Heading back to his office, he placed the hitai in his desk inside. Gathering his things, he headed outside. Walking towards Naruto, Mizuki held in a grin. His plan would go off without a hitch, and maybe he would even get a reward for killing the demon spawn. Once getting towards the downtrodden kid, Mizuki had to suppress the urge to attack him now. Naruto, was all that Mizuki said as Naruto looked up towards his sensei. What is it? Naruto asked as he looked towards Mizuki. Iruka doesn't mean to be like that, Naruto. He just worries about you, which is why he is so hard on you. Follow me for a second, I have something cool to tell you, but I can't tell you out here in the open such as this. Alright, Naruto said as he noticed Sakura and Rai talking with the others. Noticing the lonely face of Naruto, she excused herself from the group and went over to Naruto. Hey Naruto, don't worry. I'm sure there's something you can do in order to get out of going next semester and graduating with us. Sakura said, to which Naruto grinned. Anyways, I'm going to be late coming home tonight. Can you tell Rai-sensei for me, please, Saku-chan? Naruto asked, almost sounding begging. Sakura couldn't help but giggle as she promised to tell Rai for him. Alright then, now that that's taken care of, let's go, Mizuki said as Naruto got off the swing and walked off with Mizuki. Naruto didn't know it, but Phase 1 was a success and now it was on to Phase 2. Heading off to a set of rooftops, Mizuki started telling Naruto about a special way of graduating. You see, there's a secret compartment that houses all of the Hokage's scrolls, however, you need to pull on a certain book to make it seen. What happens next is that this book should open up a compartment near the Hokage's desk. You have to push the button within 30 seconds to deactivate the security, otherwise Anbu will come. Mizuki started saying before Naruto interrupted him with a question. How do you know this, Mizuki-sensei? Hokage-sama has shown me a few times myself, just in case someone needed something important from his library of scrolls. He also showed Iruka and Anbu members as well. Ah, Naruto said, listening on to what his teacher had to say. When Mizuki finished, it was starting to get dark. I think I can do it, sensei. Just to make sure, all I have to do is retrieve the scroll and learn one jutsu from the scroll of sealing, correct? Correct. Alright, Naruto said as he headed back towards his home via the rooftops. When the boy was out of hearing range, Mizuki grinned evilly. Now all I have to do is wait, he thought to himself, getting ready to lie to his comrade. Naruto opened the door, telling the occupants that he was home. Rai told Naruto not to make a big deal out of it and told him that even a few Anbu members barely passed the graduation exam. Grinning at everything that was going on around him, Naruto yawned and said that he was going to bed. Rai nodded and wished him a good night. Are you sure he's going to be alright, Aniki? Sakura asked as Rai just nodded. He had a feeling that things were going to get interesting soon. Before heading upstairs, he told Sakura not to forget that Naruto is the most unpredictable shinobi. Sighing, she headed towards the door and locked it before heading upstairs. Naruto was on her thoughts, as she got ready for bed. She wished that she could help him, but the only way she could do that was to be on the reserve list. Sighing once again, she got into bed. Naruto woke up and quietly made his way out of the house through his window. He knew Hosaki thought this was a trap, and while she might be right, any chance in trying to graduate was a chance that Naruto was willing to take. Remembering what Mizuki told him, he silently and quickly made his way over to the Hokage Tower and entered it, making sure not to trigger any alarms. Heading to the door of the Hokage's office, he noticed a small layer of chakra on the door. Sighing, he quickly noticed a nearby window. Getting an idea, he ran towards the window and upon breaking it, quickly grabbed the ledge and channeled chakra to his feet. Jumping sideways, he was just able to catch the lower banister and swing himself up. Stopping to make sure that his actions caused no alarms to start going off, and when he heard no alarms or sensed anything going on inside, he quietly slid the door open slowly, and went inside. Doing exactly what Mizuki said, a panel on the wall slid off and Naruto saw several files and scrolls within the library. This is what Mizuki-sensei was talking about, Naruto said as he made his way into the archive. Seeing the scroll that he wanted, Naruto grabbed it and started to head out the same way he came in. As he was making his way to the window, Naruto saw that the Hokage was just starting to wake up, as he accidentally knocked a glass of water off his desk. Thinking quickly, Naruto did the hand seal for his Oiruku no Jutsu, and as Sarutobi opened his eyes and yawning, and Naruto tensed as he saw Sarutobi awaken. However, when he went back to sleep, Naruto sighed with relief and dispelled the jutsu, taking off with the scroll and heading towards the forest hut. When he got there, he quickly opened the scroll and started reading over it. Hosaki told him to look over it first and then practice one of the jutsus on the scroll. When asked why, Hosaki said it was a secret as she too was looking at the scroll. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, Shadow Clone Technique, Naruto read aloud as he groaned. His worst skill was the Bunshin no Jutsu, and now the first jutsu was an advanced version of it. Sighing, he put the scroll down and stepped away from it before starting on the jutsu. However, while Naruto was working on the Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, Hosaki was looking at an interesting jutsu that dealt with fire, lots and lots of fire. Mizuki was grinning and running towards his partner's apartment. The reason a smile was on his face was simple: he was going to kill two birds with one stone. Right before knocking on Aruka's door, he composed himself in order to look panicked. After knocking on his door for several minutes, Aruka opened the door, asking, "What is it?" in an annoyed voice, seeing as he was woken up by the constant knocking. "Come with me, quickly." Naruto made off with the scroll of sealing, Mizuki said as Aruka gasped. He knew that the boy was a prankster, but to do something like this was unforgivable, even for his unofficial son. When Aruka and Mizuki got to the Hokage's mansion, several Jonin were standing in front of the Hokage, yelling about how they couldn't let what happened to just slide by as a prank. They were also worried that if it were taken outside the village, anything could happen. Telling the shinobi that were in the courtyard to find and bring Naruto back alive, he sent them out in order to find the young man. Rai and Sakura were woken up by a tap on Rei's window, and as the bird continued tapping, Rai quickly got up and opened the window, letting the bird inside. Taking the note off the bird, he quickly read the note and growled. "Naruto, you've gone too far this time," he said before he opened his bedroom door and saw Sakura standing in front of him, a look of worry on her face. "What happened? I'll tell you later. Right now, I need to get going. Go back to sleep," he said as he was getting his Anbu gear on. Sakura sighed quickly as her brother went downstairs and unlocked the door, going through it himself. Sighing, he quickly made it towards the Hokage tower. Sakura noticed the piece of crumbled paper on the ground. Picking it up, she undid what her brother did and read the words as well. What the? Naru-chan couldn't have, she thought to herself before thinking of what to do. Heading back to her room, she swiped the top card off her deck. Grinning when she found out it was the card she wanted, she quickly channeled chakra into it and soon a woman with green hair appeared before her. "What do you require, mistress? I need your help, Windy-chan. Naruto has gotten himself in trouble, and I need to find him," she started to say as she was interrupted by a laugh from her summoned creature. "I will do my best, mistress," she said as she disappeared into wisps of wind, moving out of the window and looking for Naruto. While Windy was out searching for Naruto, Sakura went over to her dresser and looked through them, finding a pair of jeans and a red shirt. Taking off her pajamas and quickly put on the clothes. Soon after, the wind started picking up. "Did you find him?" "I did. Do you want me to lead you there?" "Please," was all that she said as Windy went outside and waited for Sakura to come out the door. Once she did so, Windy appeared next to her and showed her the way. Quickly following the summoned elemental, she ran past several people on her way to the forested area. "I'm glad I decided to get boots instead of sandals," she thought to herself as she ran. Minutes later, Sakura started seeing signs that someone was training hard. Coming closer to the scene, she saw that Naruto was practicing on something. Trees in the area had some of the bark burned off and some areas collapsed into themselves, creating small craters. In the center of it all was Naruto. She wanted to yell and make herself known to her friend. She also realized how hard he was working on what seemed to be a jutsu. Dispelling Windy, she watched Naruto keep trying to complete it. She noticed the growing frustration on him. Hosaki noticed Sakura as soon as she entered the area, but chose to stay silent. The fox woman saw that Naruto almost had the cage bunched down and didn't want to interrupt him. When he finally got it, he grinned and pumped the air. Naruto didn't know it, but with that, he also moved the air around him. Interesting, Hosaki thought, as she made sure to keep an eye out on that for in the future. Naruto, Sakura is in the area and since you finished, she said, leaving off for Naruto to determine what she meant. Blushing quickly, he headed towards his friend. Hey Sakura-chan, he started to say before he held his head in pain. What was that for? You baka. Do you realize what you've done? Sakura shouted as Naruto rubbed the newly forming bump on the top of his head. Seeing that he didn't realize the damage of what he had done, just sighed. Anyways, what are you doing? I'm working on a jutsu, was all that Naruto said as she groaned at the vagueness. Iruka was worried, especially after hearing from Mizuki what happened. Heading out quickly, he went a different route than the others. First heading towards Tuki, he asked the ramen bar owner if he saw Naruto. Showing Iruka the way that he went, Iruka thanked the man and ran off in the direction he pointed. Come on, where are you Naruto? Iruka thought to himself as he headed through the village. Coming to the forest, he noticed some footprints in the ground. These are Sakura-chan's. I don't like the looks of this, he thought to himself as he followed her footprints to the clearing where they were. Naruto was just showing her how to do it since he knew she had small reserves. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, how is he doing it? Iruka thought to himself before heading over to the two. Naruto, Sakura, what are you two doing here? He shouted as Naruto stopped in his tracks and Sakura let out a surprised sound. Grinning, Naruto quickly turned to Iruka. Iruka-sensei, I can pass now, right? Raising an eyebrow, he looked at Naruto curiously. What do you mean Naruto? You have to wait until next semester. Iruka said, but Naruto was still grinning. Mizuki told me that if I learned a jutsu from this scroll I could pass, Naruto said as Iruka realized what he meant and as realization met his face, Iruka heard something in the distance. Get back, he said as he pushed both Naruto and Sakura to the side, having both of them narrowly miss several kunai, some that pierced Iruka's skin. Holding back his pain, he quickly saw Mizuki's face. Taking out the kunai that was in his arm, Iruka threw them back towards the traitor. Growling, Mizuki was annoyed at both Iruka and Sakura. They weren't supposed to be here. Sighing, he knew he would have to leave no witnesses. I'm almost surprised about the both of you finding this place so quickly. Then again, since you found this place, I can't allow you to leave this place alive. Is that so? You'd have to kill me first, and that's before you even try taking out Naruto or Sakura, and I doubt you can kill me, Iruka said before quickly doing some hand seals before realizing that there was no water around. Sakura, do you have enough chakra to summon an elemental? He shouted as Sakura shook her head in the negative. Sorry sensei, I already used Windy to find Naruto. She said while Iruka mentally groaned before remembering something. Sakura, do you have enough chakra to use rain? Iruka asked before Sakura nodded and quickly summoned the rain sprite. As rain fell from its cloud, Iruka quickly did hand seals again. Soon after, the water formed to his hand and started lengthening until it gained the length of a whip. Striking Mizuki with it, he quickly had it wrap around the ex-teacher. However, before Iruka could do anything more, Mizuki disappeared and a log took his place. Pulling the Mizu no Muchi, whip of water back, Iruka heard Mizuki once again in the distance. Naruto, hand over the scroll and I'll let your demon whore head back to her brother in one piece. Don't listen to him Naruto. Mizuki tricked you into stealing the scroll. Iruka shouted as Naruto just stood there, not understanding what was going on, just listening. Seeing his confusion, Iruka told Naruto that it held forbidden techniques. Mizuki appeared behind Iruka and tried to kill him, but Iruka sidestepped the thrust. Don't believe anything this traitor says. You can't trust him, especially since he knows everything, especially why you're hated by everyone. What? Both Naruto and Sakura asked in surprise. No, Mizuki, stop. Iruka shouted, but Mizuki just ignored him. You remember in your textbook that the Kyūbi no Yoko was destroyed by the fourth Hokage. That is just a lie to make people in your generation think they have nothing to worry about, but that's not true, he started to say as he dodged a strike from Iruka's water whip. You can't. That information is secret. No one can tell him that. Tell me what? Naruto asked in curiosity, something that he would soon regret. The fourth didn't kill the Kyūbi, but rather he sealed it in a newborn child. You want to know who that child is, Naruto? Who? It's you. You are the Kyūbi no Yoko in human form. It's why everyone despises you, including Iruka, Sakura and Rai. Mizuki said, as Naruto looked on terrified. Now then, die, Kyūbi scum. He shouted as he threw a Fuma shuriken at Naruto. Naruto, duck, Iruka said, but he wasn't listening. He was in shock from the information that was just given to him. After all these years with his after-class sensei during his dreams, she never told him that she was the Kyūbi no Yoko. Iruka scrambled to get in front of Naruto and was just able to stand in front of him, and turned his back to the blade. Iruka-sensei, but why? It's because you were once the same as me. After my parents died, no one ever complimented or recognized me. I became a bad student and screwed up so much, not caring that they were laughing at me, because when they were laughing, they were recognizing me. Since I couldn't get anyone's attention when I was a good student, I acted like an idiot. You knew what that was like, right, Naruto? Iruka asked Naruto as tears started running down his face. Gomen Naruto-kun for not being able to help you as much as Sakura-chan and Rai-kun, but I'll do my best to make it up to you now, Iruka said as he protected Naruto from other attacks. Run, both of you. I'll take care of Ikasama. Iruka said as both nodded. Laughing, Iruka turned back towards the traitor. What do you find so funny, Tem? He's not running from the village, he's running towards it, and with that scroll on his back, I wonder what kind of destruction he'll cause, Mizuki said before sidestepping a thrown kunai before being smacked with the water whip. Dissolving the whip due to it draining his reserves, Iruka ducked under a kunai. After running for a while, Naruto stopped abruptly before falling over due to Sakura bumping into him. Getting up, he looked back at Sakura. Why are you still here, Sakura-chan? Didn't you hear what Mizuki-sensei said? I'm a monster, he started to say before he was slapped by Sakura, then she hugged him. I don't care about that, Naru-chan. If you were a monster, Rai and I would have already noticed. Do you remember how we became friends in the first place? You were sitting by yourself when you noticed several kids stealing my cards. You could have just stayed there and watched, but you didn't. You got them back for me, even scared the children away. If that's what a monster is, then I'd rather be a monster than human, especially after the way the villagers treat you, Sakura said as he kept her grip around the boy's neck. Thanks, Sakura-chan, I needed that, Naruto said, grinning. Now then, let's go help Iruka-sensei. He would ask Hosaki about everything later, when everything wasn't out of control and his anger in check. Right, she replied as the both of them headed back to the battle. You don't get it, do you, Iruka? Naruto is the fox in human form. He'll take his revenge on the village if left unchecked. He said, and before Iruka could respond, he groaned in pain and fell down. What? That's right, I forgot I laced my blades with poisons, Mizuki thought to himself before grinning evilly. Any last words, Iruka? If Naruto was the demon fox, then you're right, he would take his vengeance out on the village. However, he's an excellent shinobi that I recognize as if he was my own son. He's a hard-working, earnest, clumsy person. He's not the demon fox but Uzumaki Naruto of Konoha. Iruka said, finishing his speech as the two just got back to the scene. Noticing the tears, Sakura looked at Naruto in curiosity. Telling her not to worry, they listened to Mizuki telling Iruka to die, and at that time, Naruto acted on instinct and came out of the hiding spot, using a leading knee to smash into Mizuki's face. Sakura came out of the area and went towards Iruka, and asked the man if he had kunai and some tape with him. He replied in a positive, taking out one clean kunai and gave it to Sakura. Naruto's knee thrust brought Mizuki away from the two people that Naruto was trying to protect. As he slid to a stop, Naruto slipped the scroll off his back, and placed it on the ground nearby. "Don't you dare touch Iruka-sensei, I'll kill you if you do," Naruto said as a small amount of red chakra leaked out of Naruto. "What can you do, demon brat? I'm a Chunin, and you're not even a genin yet. Tell you what, I'll let you have the first shot, and then I'll return the blow 1,000 times over," Mizuki shouted arrogantly before taking a defensive stance. "Come at me, if you can, that is. If you can at least hit me, I'll let the demon whore you call your friend go back to her brother in one piece, maybe. Don't you dare threaten Sakura-chan like that. I'll protect them, even if it kills me." Taju Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Mass Shadow Clone Technique, Naruto yelled, as several clones of Naruto showed up, each leaking a small amount of red chakra. "You said you were going to give us the first shot. Is that true, Mizuki-sensei?" he asked in a mocking tone as Mizuki stood there in shock. Not only did Naruto just create 500 clones, but also still able to move, a feat that shouldn't be possible. However, he couldn't apprehend it as Naruto's clones beat Mizuki to a bloody pulp. Once they were done, Iruka grinned. "Sensei, what are we going to do about him?" Sakura asked, pointing towards the bloody pulp that resembled Mizuki as Naruto dispelled his clones, getting a small headache as well, but he just thought it was because of the battle he had before. "Tie him up and let the Anbu deal with it," Iruka said as Naruto said something about just leave him there to die. Taking the ninja wire that Iruka gave her, she headed towards Mizuki and tried tying him up. Before she could, Mizuki grinned before grabbing the girl, pulling one remaining kunai from a hidden place in his footwear and put it towards her neck. "I'll give you a choice. Either you let me go and forget your conflict with me, or she dies," Mizuki said, but before he could do anything else, a voice cut into the area. "Hyutama. Barizadu. Ice shot. Blizzard. What the hell?" Mizuki asked before feeling a sharp pain in his arm before it started freezing over. Shocked at the sensation in his arm, Sakura scrambled out of Mizuki's grasp, rubbing her neck where she just had the kunai barely touching her skin. Before anyone else can do anything, 3 more shots came from the distance, each hitting a different limb of the traitor. The Hokage was watching and just about to send Anbu to Naruto's location when he heard that voice and grinned before cutting the chakra off his crystal ball, ending the jutsu that allowed him to see what was happening. Taking out a special piece of parchment, he quickly wrote down to stop all activities. The ink disappeared and Sarutobi sighed, knowing that he'd have to talk to Sakura and Naruto tomorrow as soon as possible, and with that in mind, he started writing once again. This message was for Rai and Rai alone, and it told him to bring Sakura and Naruto with him tomorrow. "I wish he had a mask as well," Sarutobi said to himself before sighing, knowing that a large amount of paperwork would be needed after all of this, including the Tokubetsu Jonin that froze Mizuki. "I swear I'm too old for this," he mumbled before using the Shushin no Jutsu and disappearing from his office. A young man walked out from the protection of the trees, seeing a kunai in front of his face. Putting his hands up quickly in defense, he quickly pointed up and the 3 saw that he had a Konoha Hitai 8. Not letting their guard down, Naruto took the kunai away from the man's face. "Thank you. I'm not surprised that you act like that, even if I was the one who saved your girlfriend," he said before both Naruto and Sakura blushed. "Who are you?" Naruto asked. "I go by many names, but you guys can call me your friend," he said before disappearing in a poof of smoke, irritating Naruto since the man didn't answer his question. Sighing, Iruka was about to grab the traitor now that his limbs were unable to move, but another poof of smoke caused Iruka to turn around. Seeing white robes, he sighed once again, holding his ribs in pain after doing so. "Sensei, you shouldn't be moving so quickly like that. Sakura shouted as she too saw the Hokage poof into existence. Hokage-sama, what are you doing here? I'm here to make sure everyone is alright, he said, looking at Naruto and Iruka before both grinned, signifying that they would be alright. Sakura smiled, letting the Hokage know that she was also fine. Now then, Iruka, I thank you for taking care of Mizuki and the students as well. I think that deserves a payment of at least a B rank mission, maybe A rank. Sakura and Naruto, you two will be given payment for a C rank mission, maybe a B rank mission. Anbu, take the traitor and bring him to Ibiki. He'll understand why it's best not to betray Konoha. The Hokage said as a dog and weasel showed up, and the weasel did a few hand seals before raising his mask just a bit and blew fire from his mouth, melting the limbs of the unconscious man. Alright then, everyone, it is very late and I'm sure we'll be very busy tomorrow, so let's go home, the Hokage said as most of the people agreed with him. Actually, Hokage-sama, could I speak to Naruto for a moment? Iruka asked as Sarutobi nodded. When Sakura went to go as well, Iruka felt like hitting himself, but he asked Sakura if he could speak to Naruto alone. Sadly nodding, Sakura turned around and headed back off to where everyone else was. It's important, besides, you'll see everything when he gets home, he thought to himself before turning around and seeing Naruto's look. That wasn't really nice, sensei. I know that I was mean to Sakura-chan, but I wanted to give you something. Oh, Naruto asked with a raised eyebrow. Iruka told him to close his eyes and Naruto did so. Once he did, Iruka took out the hitai that was going to be Naruto's in the first place and tied it around his head. Alright, you can open your eyes now, Naruto, Iruka said as he did so, not feeling any different. Before he could ask, Iruka told him to head to a puddle that was created during the battle. Looking at his reflection, Naruto saw the medal on his hitai. Does this? He started to ask before Iruka just nodded. Naruto was so happy that he jumped and hugged his teacher, the two of them falling to the ground. Careful, Naruto, Iruka said before holding back the groan of pain that his ribs took from the glomp that Naruto gave him. Grinning, he only knew that this was the beginning of what was to happen. We should get going, Naruto, was all that Iruka said before the boy agreed. One thing was for certain, Uzumaki Naruto would not be left behind. A slap echoed through the room as Gabriella's face went towards the side of where she was hit, the force of it making her grimace in pain before quickly putting a hand to where she was hit just moments before. Why must you continue to disgrace the Uchiha name, Gabriella? Not only have you failed to gain the Sharingan and now this. You're lucky I'm the brother of the head family, or else they would have thrown you out long ago. I'm thinking of doing the same myself, the man said before glaring at the Chunin in front of him. Now leave, your presence is starting to disgust me, he said as Gabriella quickly left the room and headed to her own. It was only there that she allowed herself to cry. A few hours later, she woke up to someone knocking on her door. Leave me alone, was her strangled cry as the voice behind the door sighed. Gab-chan, I'm sorry for my uncle's behavior. I know he is harsh on you because he doesn't see your potential, especially without the Sharingan, the voice started to say behind the door as Gabriella just sighed and interrupted him. Itachi, I know you're trying to make me feel better, but I don't know what to do anymore. I've tried everything to make my Sharingan awaken, but nothing works. Keep pushing your limits, Gab-chan. Sooner or later you'll achieve your goals, Itachi said as he walked away from the door, not seeing the look or grin that was on Gabriella's face. That vague amount of information was the first time anyone actually gave her any real advice. Naruto sighed in happiness as he woke up. After everything that happened last night, Sakura was still willing to be his friend. However, he was a little annoyed at the fact that Hosaki wasn't going to tell him about this until he became a Junin. She does have a point though, guess I can't be too mad at her, Naruto thought to himself before throwing the blanket off himself and heading towards his dresser where he got some clothes and went to the bathroom. As he went into the shower and turned on the water, he let the drops of controlled rain splatter around him as he thought back to what Hosaki told him before she let him sleep. Flashback. Were you ever going to tell me about this, Hosaki-chan? Naruto asked in a rare form of anger at the fox demoness, a look of sadness on her features. I was going to tell you once you reached Chunin, maybe Junin. It's a lot of information that could hurt you, plus there's an old saying that says ignorance is bliss. You were doing it to protect me, but why? I did it to protect you, and I did it because I thought it was the right thing to do. I also thought that you could safely protect yourself when you gained those ranks that I mentioned. I can accept that, I guess, but what, Naru-chan? Why me? Why attack and kill so many shinobi and kunoichi? He asked as he held back his tears. Being constantly attacked for something he didn't know about or responsible for and then having it told to him made Naruto wonder why everything happened. I cannot answer the first one since I don't know the answer, but I will tell you about why I attacked on one condition. You must save all your questions until the end, alright? Alright. Not many people know this, but I once had a daughter, Kuin Red Flame. When I went out to get some food for her and myself, a dog demon thought it wise to attack me. I took care of him soon enough, but he was able to retreat. However, while I was doing this, my daughter was vulnerable. When I got back to our cave, it smelled of snake and Kuin was missing. I was able to track the scent back to Konoha, however, that was where the scent went missing. I was never able to find out who took her, and now I'll probably never see her again since you know what happens when I got to Konohagakure. You were attacked and assumed the shinobi and kunoichi were aiding him. Exactly, and that is why I took matters into my own hands and sealed into you. I just wish I could see her again. Knowing my luck, I have a feeling we'll see her eventually. I suppose. End flashback. Turning off the water and drying off, Naruto slipped into his clothes and slipped on the vest. While he didn't like becoming Soren, he liked the clothes that came with it. Getting out of the bathroom, he saw Sakura there, still yawning. As he went downstairs to start breakfast, he heard the water start running, assuming that Sakura was starting to wake up, as the warm water turned to cold halfway through. Finishing her shower quickly, she dried off and stomped down the stairs, glaring at the blonde, but she then noticed the toast, eggs and sausage that he made for both of them and she stopped glaring at him. Sorry, Saku-chan. Just sit down and be quiet. I'm still not fully awake yet, she said as she yawned. The cold shower helped, but it would still be a little while before she completely woke up. Remind me what we're doing up so early again. It probably has something to do with last night. Naruto said in between bites as Sakura shrugged, the gesture meaning maybe. Silence consumed them once again as the both of them finished their breakfast. Putting the dishes in the sink, they both left, Sakura locking up while Naruto waited for her. Remembering what happened, the duo walked to the Hokage Tower with silence hovering over them. Naruto? Sakura asked as the boy looked in her direction. Yeah, Sakura. Even though Iruka-sensei was kind enough to give you his Hittite, why didn't you get it when you had the chance? Why act like dead last? Sighing, he looked at Sakura with sad eyes. It's because I'm the villager's scapegoat. If people knew of my true capabilities, then it wouldn't be long before someone stronger than me is found and uses me as their punching bag or kills me. Either option would be good for the whole of the village, and while I wouldn't mind showing my true strength, being dead last is actually kinda fun, especially when I can surprise someone with my true strength, and besides, I like the idea of living in this world. That makes two of us. Chuckling at what the thought he heard from Hosaki-chan, he noticed how close they were to the tower. Come on, we're almost there now, I'll race ya. He said while grinning, not one of his normal grins, but a true grin, something rarely seen on Naruto's face, and that made Sakura happy as she too grinned and raced after Naruto. Are you sure it's a good idea to tell them, especially after what happened last night? Rai asked as he looked across towards his boss, having his fingers crossed and him looking at his colleague from on top of his platform. No, but I think Naruto has the right to know, and since Sakura was with him at the time of being told, she also has the right to said knowledge, the Hokage said before hearing Naruto outside and soon after, Sakura. No fair, you had a head start. All's fair in love and war, Sakura-chan. Naruto replied quickly before recomposing himself and grinning before he opened the door for Sakura. She glared at him for a second before grinning. It was hard to stay mad at him for long, and as the two walked in, the jovial nature that the two youngsters had quickly stopped and replaced with serious faces, especially when they saw Rai there as well. Naruto, if you could please close the door, Sarutobi asked as Naruto complied with the request. After he did so, Sarutobi did several hand seals before 4 marks on the walls, door and ceiling appeared. Now then, I will first say that we have dealt with the traitorous Ikasama for what he has done. That information was classified as a double S-ranked secret punishable by treason and death. Pardon me, Hokage-sama, but why was Naruto chosen? Sakura asked as he silently winced, having to tell a white lie. The Yondaime found Naruto nearby, and seeing that he was out of time, he had no choice but to seal the Kyūbi no into Naruto. Now then, where was I? Oh yes, what Ikasama said, which part of is sadly true. You are the jailer of the Kyūbi no Kitsune, but Naruto, whatever people say or do to you, please understand that they do not understand. Gigi, why do you keep calling her the Kyūbi no Kitsune? Her title is the Kyūbi no Yoko. Naruto said as the Hokage looked at him in surprise. Have you been talking to the Kyūbi? Sarutobi asked in shock, and was in more shock when Naruto nodded. Before he could say anything more about it, Naruto told him everything that happened until then. So Hosaki has been helping you? He asked as the boy just nodded. Sighing and reaching for his pipe, he thought about what to do. Naruto, as long as you and Hosaki-chan are on agreeable terms and she isn't using you, then I don't see any harm in her helping you from time to time. Now then, what we discussed here cannot leave this room, so if you say anything about Hosaki without either my or Naruto's permission, you would be charged with treason. Am I understood? Sakura, Rai? We understand, Hokage-sama, Rai said, and at that, Sarutobi allowed the two youngsters to go, reminding them that they still needed their pictures taken and about the team placements a week from then. Rai, for the sake of that boy, I want you to keep an eye on him, and I want you as a second sensei to whatever team Naruto and Sakura make to keep watch over them. I understand, but won't the council be angered at this, you helping Naruto as much as you are? Rai asked as Sarutobi chuckled. I have a feeling that Naruto and Sakura's final teammate will be an Uchiha. Ah, I see. Well, I'll keep an eye on them, but I'd rather not dull my blade, was all Rai said before vanishing off into the sunny day, remembering that his new sword was supposed to come in today. He was glad that Naruto and Sakura wouldn't become strangers. Sighing on that, he thought of someone else who could help the blonde before a smile came to his face. Now that that's over with, I have to deal with the council, Sarutobi thought to himself before sighing as he went towards the conference room. Knowing that this would be a headache in the making, he told his secretary to have a small saucer of sake ready for him when he returned. Heading to the room, he sighed once again as he stood in front of the doors before opening them and heading in. This is going to be a long day. He found the clan heads and several other civilian councilmen and women waiting for him. As he made his way to his seat in the center of the room, he noticed that all eyes were on him, waiting for him to speak. Now then, I would like to start with the prospering new group of shinobi and kunoichi that will be joining our ranks, Sarutobi said, interrupted by one of the people who hated Naruto. Why is that? The unnamed council member started to say before Sarutobi glared at the man with a low amount of killing intent, but it was enough to shut the man up. First off, his name is Uzumaki Naruto, not demon or any variation of that word. Now then, Naruto saved a future kunoichi as well as exposed a traitor amongst our ranks. He was also able to use a B-ranked kinjutsu to aid himself in that endeavor. Sarutobi continued after he dealt with the man. Rumors says that the gunslinger helped him, One female on the council whispered to the person next to her before the door blasted off its hinges and a male appeared at the doorframe of where the door once was. This man was wearing what looked like a blue jacket, flowing into something akin to a cloak behind him. On the back of his jacket was the image of a dragon imprisoned by several branches. A dark blue shirt was worn underneath the jacket and two side arms were hidden by the jacket cloak. He was also wearing a pair of dark pants with a belt around them with hollow cylinders everywhere on the belt. On his feet were a pair of standard shinobi boots. The last thing, which made him the most dangerous, was that his Konoha Hitai was acting as a blindfold, covering both eyes, almost like a certain lazy Junin currently in the room as well. Why hello there Saru-sama, I'm sorry for intruding on something as important as this, but I heard my name spoken so. You thought it wise to check it out, didn't you Ark-kun? He asked while looking at the person who accidentally called his name before a hidden smirk crossed his lips. One of the females had a look of shock on her face and only thought of one thing, how the hell did he hear that? As the two teens were looking for a photographer to take their pictures, most of them either refused to take Naruto's picture, or charged the two twice the price that it would take for Naruto's picture. Annoyed at this continued idiocy, she left each area before finally stopping at the one place she knew would take both of their pictures for little money or no money at all. It helped that the photographer was also a good civilian friend of Sakura's. Heading to her simple shop, Sakura pushed Naruto through the entrance before sighing. She knew that most people would consider Tomoyo a crazy romantic, but she knew what she was doing when it came to taking photos. Sakura-chan, Tomoyo shouted before enveloping her friend in a big hug. Looking at the male that was walking through the shop after Sakura pushed him in, Tomoyo giggled at the awkwardness on his face. Is he Naruto? Tomoyo asked before Sakura nodded, blushing as Tomoyo cackled in glee. Tomoyo-chan, whatever you're planning, please don't do it, Sakura pleaded with the young girl, knowing that she loved playing matchmaker. Fine, but you did come at a bad time though. I don't have much film left, enough for one more picture, maybe two. I swear I'm not playing matchmaker here, Tomoyo said as Sakura sighed. Knowing that she didn't have any other choice, Sakura walked over to Naruto and told her what was going on. He frowned for a bit before grinning and asked a question that made Sakura groan. Of course he wanted to pose for the camera. After taking the picture and waiting for the two copies, the original and a copy of the original, both had Naruto and Sakura back to back, Naruto holding up a kunai as if he was going to twirl it, and Sakura held up a card between her forefinger and middle finger, the back towards the camera. These are good, Tomoyo-chan, Sakura said as Tomoyo blushed in embarrassment and praise. Sakura went to her purse to pay her friend, but Tomoyo said that it was on the house, besides having a picture of her best friend and her crush was enough payment for her. Sakura was glad that the blonde was out of hearing range before turning around and looking at the girl in front of her with a stare on her face and mouthed the words, "Don't you dare tell him." Dropping their pictures off at the tower for the Hokage to look over, the two decided to get some lunch, especially after Sakura's stomach started growling. Naruto wisely decided to keep his mouth shut, a decision that his body would thank him for since it wouldn't have to go through a thorough workout from Sakura when she was using the fight card. She relies on them too much, he absently thought as he felt his partner silently agree with him. Letting the thought slide for now, Naruto and Sakura headed towards their second favorite place to eat. Once there, Naruto opened the flap for both himself and the brunette before they sat down at the counter and greeted by Tyuki, jokingly calling them his favorite couple. Both blushed at that before quickly denying it, muttering at the old man while he laughed. I heard you were able to graduate from the academy, Naruto, congratulations. Does that mean I need to find a new helper from now on? Tyuki asked, referring to Naruto's doppelganger Soren, who usually delivered some ramen to customers in exchange for free food. Probably, but if I find time in between future missions and any training as a team, I'll gladly help you Tyuki Oji-san. Naruto said, grinning as the ramen owner scowled at that. Handing them their ramen, Naruto and Sakura ate in peace. Sakura, what? Can you take out your deck for a second? He asked in a serious tone, especially since he knew how much she guarded those cards. As she did so, she turned to see Naruto at the door, a small amount of money for the ramen due to his stubbornness. When asked where they were going, all he replied was, to make you a better rounded kunoichi. I really wish you would stop doing that arc. I understand that you hate the council as much as I do, but if you keep barging in there, eventually the council will charge you with some bogus charge, tack on insubordination and treason before exiling you out of Konoha, maybe even Hai no Kuni, Land of Fire. Pacing around the office as he said this, Ark was waiting for him to sit down. True, but my skills are too extraordinary for them to even try something like that, and they can't touch Shimo Frost and Nobara Wild Rose for examination, unless they want to invoke some of their personal seals, Ark said as the Hokage nodded. Anyways, how was your mission? It was surprisingly easy, seeing as they didn't mind getting the demon whore and her out of there, he said with venom, almost spitting out the terms that the village used on her and her guardian. Wherever they are safe, correct? Sarutobi asked as Ark just chuckled before starting to laugh. Once he stopped though. If nothing else, they are safe. I have a friend keeping an eye on them, someone I trust just as much as I trust my partners, he said, patting his guns as the two continued to talk about the events that occurred after his mission and on his way home. If that is the case, I have a personal favor to ask. Sighing, Ark took a cigarette from his hip pocket and put it in his mouth before lighting it. Whenever you say that, that just means more trouble for me, the young man said before Sarutobi chuckled at his friend's way of saying, what is it? Well, it goes like this. Come on Naruto, give me a break here. Sakura shouted as she blocked another punch from her sparring partner. After lunch, Naruto took her to a training ground that wasn't being used and asked if she could spar with him. She agreed before reaching into her deck, but she couldn't place any chakra into them as she jumped over a sweeping kick and then ducked under the punch he threw. She knew he was a brawler, but he usually gave her some time to draw one card or made a mistake, but this time he was constantly attacking and not letting her take a break. Come on Naruto, let me get a card out, Sakura yelled as she ducked under another punch, before being tapped with a low wheel kick. This went on for a little longer before Naruto stopped, both having sweat on their foreheads, Naruto more so than Sakura. Baka, what was that for? You didn't even give me a chance to attack, Sakura accused as Naruto took his vest off and standing, his clothes starting to stick to him like a second skin. That's the point Saku-chan, your greatest strength is also your greatest weakness. You rely on your cards for every battle, but if someone ambushed and attacked you like I just did, Naruto left hanging, Sakura catching on as to what he was saying. Glaring at the blonde, she then added that she wasn't a one-dimensional kunoichi before she heard his laughter. Growling at him, she pounced, causing the both of them to lose their balance and fall to the ground, Sakura on top of Naruto. Blushing at the closeness, they both parted from their positions and sat on the ground, looking away from each other with the blush still on their faces. The awkward silence continued before Naruto coughed, dispelling it soon after. Sorry, she said before Naruto shook his head, explaining that it was his fault. He figured that showing her rather than telling her would be a better idea, and for once, he was wrong. What did you mean though? She asked as Naruto got up, extending his hand for her to grab. Once she did, Naruto pulled her up as if nothing happened. Exactly what I said, you rely on your cards way too much. I have an idea to help though, Naruto said as he shuddered, not exactly liking what he was about to say. Continuing on, he then told her about a taijutsu expert that even her brother hated, a man that worked himself to the ground, and then sometimes even worked himself through it at times. The Junin named Maida guy. If he makes us wear those crazy spandex suits of his, I'm asking fight and see if she can teach us or at least me, Sakura said as Naruto nodded. A few hours later, the two found the man, however, When they asked if he could train them, he said only on the condition of at least trying one of the despised garment, which caused Sakura to growl, and before she could do anything, Naruto dragged the grumbling girl away before she could do any everlasting damage. All right, we did things your way, now we're doing things my way. Make some clones, she commanded as Naruto gulped slightly. She only got like this when she was extremely mad. Naruto did as told, creating 5 clones as Sakura asked as she summoned the fight card in all of her glory. The humanoid card looked on in curiosity as she looked at her master. Mistress, why did you summon me? I have a weakness, and only you can help fight Chan, Sakura said as she looked down at the ground. The card knew what she was feeling, and smiled sadly at her. I might be able to help mistress, but I can guarantee nothing. Thanks, but can you do me a favor? Please, just call me Sakura, or Sakura-chan. Mistress makes me sound old. The fight card smirked at that, before nodding. Naruto, feeling left out, asked what he could do, and when Fight looked at Sakura, she just shrugged and added that he could use some help as well. The girls started laughing when he started grumbling. It couldn't hurt, besides, I can always help if you find her style doesn't fit. I'm sure I have something for you, besides that Elorophobia one. Don't remind me. Sighing as he heard laughter going on in his head, he did not need a reminder of one of his greatest fears and started listening to one of the many cards that made Sakura dangerous as she finished her examination on Sakura. I'm sorry, but as you are right now, I cannot train you, nor do I want to waste my time. Don't get me wrong, mistress, but it would be a waste of my time to train either you or Naruto. I'm sorry, was all she said as Sakura looked down, saddened at the fact that not even her method would be beneficial. However, if you two want to start on the path to better yourselves, weights are a good place to start, the blue-haired female said before disappearing and returning back into her card form. Bending down and picking the card up, Sakura put the card back into her pocket, tears slowly making way to the surface. Blinking them back, she turned to Naruto. You know of any good places to get some shinobi supplies? Sakura asked as Naruto grinned. I'm a former street rat, I should know Konoha's maze of streets like the back of my hand. Come on, follow me, he said before leading Sakura to where they were from into the village, and after a small walk with many twists and turns, they appeared in front of a small shop. This isn't the best in Konoha, but the owners treated me fairly when I needed shuriken and kunai, and I'm pretty sure she'll give us a few tips on the uses of weights as well, especially since one of her teammates uses weights as well. Oh, Tenten Kengeki Weapons, also known as the weapon mistress of Konoha, and the co-owner of the store, along with her adopted father, Naruto said as he opened the door, holding it open for Sakura. Once they entered, the girl at the counter became active and watched the duo come closer to the counter. Hey Naruto, Sakura, the girl said, envious about how close she was to Naruto and the relationship she had with the boy. The person that she was trying to help open up was still an arrogant prick at best, a bastard at worst, but she hid it well. Sighing quietly to herself, she smothered her feelings for her friends. What can I help you two with? She asked as Naruto told her what he wanted. I know about Rock Lee's training regime, and we were both wondering if we could start on weights ourselves. Naruto said, knowing that Sakura would still be mad at the card for a while and didn't want to talk. You want to start with some weights? Tenten asked as Naruto nodded in agreement, as Tenten went into the back of the store to get the requested artifacts. Once she returned with a few pairs, she asked the both of them to test each size to feel if they could handle it and that it wouldn't be too tight to pinch the skin. Finding a pair that they both liked, Tenten showed them how they worked before Naruto paid for them all before adding chakra into them, putting it at the minimum setting, 2 pounds each, equaling a total of 8 pounds of deadweight, as Sakura did the same for her own pair of weights. Thanks Ten-chan. We'll see you around if we need anything. Naruto shouted from the doorway as they both left from the shop. When they got outside, Naruto stopped and asked Sakura if she wanted to know of a good training spot. When she answered yes, the two started walking, noticing the difference and that it was a little bit harder to do with the weights on. Soon after though, the two made an agreement to up the weight to 5 before standing in front of the Hokage monument. You want us to go up that steep path with weights on? Naruto, I'm not a stamina freak like you are, you know that, Sakura said as Naruto stopped. I know that Saku-chan, but at least try to go halfway, please. If you have trouble, you can stop the chakra flow to the weights and just walk up normally, but you should at least try, right? He asked as Sakura nodded, before putting on a stoic face and asking Naruto to lead, which he did so readily. Tiring halfway through, Sakura made it another few steps up the steep mountain path before taking some of the chakra away, going down to the lower setting once again. Noticing that they were almost at the top, Sakura wondered what type of secret training ground Naruto found. Speaking of which, how did he find this place? Voicing her thoughts aloud to her blonde partner, Naruto only said that it became a hideout for when he was younger. Sighing, not only at the vagueness but also because of why he had to find it, and soon after, they reached the top, where she just stood there and stared as her breath was taken away by the scenery. Wow, was all that she could say as Naruto chuckled. Welcome to my humble abode before I came to live with you. Not much, but it's pretty good, don't you think? He asked before she sighed. This was where he was when she didn't see the boy for hours at a time, or during his birthday. Now then, I'm going to practice with the Kage Bunshin. Sake-chan noticed something last night, but doesn't want to tell me, saying I should figure it out for myself, he said, to which Sakura nodded. Besides, if you rely on her all the time, then what about your own skills? I suppose, but she did give me a hint. It's not impossible to look both left and right at the same time, whatever that means, he said as a clone disappeared, not realizing that the information traveled to his brain, before saying something about how the river was lower than usual, and said as such. Grinning at that, Sakura told her that was what Hosaki was referring about, and when Naruto asked about what she meant, she asked him how he knew about the river when he wasn't looking at it. Thinking about it for a while, Naruto finally understood. So that's what you meant by saying that cryptic clue. Of course, besides, I couldn't give you too much of an easy clue, right? She asked as Naruto gave the equivalent of a mental sigh. Now what? That is up to you, Naruto. Hosaki said as both she, Naruto and Sakura lost track of time on the mountain and the training grounds. Noticing that Naruto and Sakura were running late, he started growing worried. When the sun started to set, he went to start looking for them. Closing his eyes, he steadied his breathing before becoming invisible to the world, concentrating on the chakra signatures that were in Konoha. Sensing a big source of chakra alongside a smaller and condensed one, he let his breathing return to normal before his body reappeared and he vanished. What he saw shocked him, and made him glad all in the same motion. He noticed that while Sakura was sleeping, Naruto was kind enough to remove his vest and place it around the girl, as well as lighting a small fire. He also noticed a set of weights by her side and grinned evilly. Naruto bought weights for himself and for Sakura. Oh, how much fun their senseis would have. Not bad kid, not bad at all, he thought to himself as he watched Naruto use 5 clones as fighting practice, while another 5 were working on chakra exercises, balancing either a stone or a leaf on top of the head and other places along the body as well. He remembered, he thought to himself before looking at the blonde for a few more minutes. After Naruto finished and dismissed the clones one by one, Rai noticed that Naruto's large chakra started to grow a little denser, if only just. He would still have trouble doing some low-rank jutsus. Naruto, why didn't you send a message or something? You had me worried, Rai said, noticing that the young fox container jumped in surprise at that. I tried telling you, but you wouldn't listen, Hosaki said as Naruto grumbled on about how Rai was able to sneak up on him like that, before looking at the surroundings and saw that his guardian killed the fire and was holding his sister in his hands carefully. I hate to say this, but when we get home, you can use your stupid jutsu and undress her, Rai said before tuning out the blonde's rant about how the Oiruku no Jutsu was not a stupid technique before they both vanished into the night. Yawning, Sakura woke up nice and warm, confused as to how she got into her bed, and changed. Growling, she got up and picked out a few articles of clothing before stomping to the shower. After getting in, she locked the door before turning on the water and letting her thoughts start to wander. A few seconds later, a knock entered her savannah and Sakura sighed before stopping her shower. "Who is it?" she asked as Rai told her that the Hokage wanted to see her and Naruto as soon as possible. "Fine," was all she said before quickly finishing. Heading downstairs, Sakura saw Naruto already dressed and ready to go, waiting for her. This somewhat seemed ironic, since it was always her waiting on him to wake up. Wondering what was going on, Sakura looked at Naruto, who shrugged, also not knowing what else was going on. As all three members left the house, Naruto and Sakura went towards the Hokage Tower yet again. "Why do I have a feeling we won't like the outcome of this?" she asked as Naruto shrugged. Seeing the door in the distance, Sakura let an ungraceful smirk adorn her features before running off, leaving a stunned Naruto looking at her for a few moments before yelling and running after her. Soon after, they reached the door to the Hokage's office, and were led in by the elderly man. "Oji-san, you wanted to see us?" Naruto asked as they saw the Hokage with two profiles, one in each hand. Both of them had one picture on them, theirs. "These are great pictures, you two, retake them." "What?" both Naruto and Sakura shouted in confusion. "Even though these stay in the village, these are important documents, and should be taken seriously," the Hokage said as the door silently slid open as a young boy slipped in. Before anyone else in the room could say anything, the boy yelled, "You old geezer, fight me. The title of Godime Hokage belongs to me, Sarutobi Konohamaru." However, as bold as the statement was, Konohamaru tripped over his scarf and face planted soon after. "Problems just keep showing up today," the old man thought to himself before sighing as he saw the scene unravel before his eyes. Somewhere across Konoha, a blinded gunslinger sneezed as the thought crossed the old man's mind. Picking himself up from the floor, the young boy looked around before setting his eyes on the blonde and brunette in the room. Narrowing his eyes, the young boy accused Naruto of tripping him, which Naruto profusely denied, adding that he tripped over his own feet. A low growl came from Konohamaru, and the boy glared at Naruto, Naruto returning it with one of his own. Starting another attack, Konohamaru went towards Naruto, but the young boy didn't get a chance to do anything because Naruto quickly grabbed him by his shirt, picking him up in the process. When he did that, he also noticed a man dressed in black appeared in the door, panic running across his face, the glasses lowered. The man noticed what was going on and quickly yelled at Naruto to let him go or pay the consequences for harming the honorable grandson of the third Hokage. "Naruto, you shouldn't," Sakura tried to warn him as Naruto looked towards the boy with his fist raised, and ready to hit the boy that tried attacking him. "It's just as I thought. This person isn't bold enough to hit me." After hearing that fact, the young boy thought to himself, right before Naruto brought his fist down, making a lump on the boy's head, while shouting that he didn't care if he was the Hokage's son. "Honorable grandson," the male with the glasses said, before glaring at Naruto. "Stupid demon brat, harming the honorable grandson," he thought to himself as he pushed his glasses up. Sighing quietly at the scene, Sarutobi said that Naruto and Sakura could leave, and as they did so, Sakura bowed in apology for Naruto's actions, but Sarutobi waved it off. For once, someone wasn't afraid to give Konohamaru what he deserved. As the duo left, each received a glare from the glasses-wearing man, ignoring it as they always did. Before long, they were walking out of the tower, both now bored out of their minds. However, the bored look turned into a glare as both genin looked behind them, noticing a square rock. Whispering to Naruto, Sakura asked if he wanted to take care of it or her. Saying that he would take care of it, Naruto then suggested Sakura to do some training at 3 pounds, to which Sakura said she would. Heading off, Sakura activated the weights, carefully setting them to the weight that she wanted. After the two of them left, Ebisu ranted, saying that even though he was the grandson of the Hokage, the honorable grandson shouldn't involve himself with people like them and teach him how to become a great Hokage. However, as the teacher looked away for a few seconds, the boy was gone. Where did the young master go? Konohamaru is probably following Naruto and Sakura by now, Ebisu. I would be surprised if he wasn't, he said as Ebisu started panicking and ran out of the room, searching for Sakura, Naruto and his student. Why would he want to head after those riff-raffs? He thought to himself before heading out, his personal mission, finding the young master. Walking back to where the square rock was, he gave it a small kick. When nothing happened, Naruto got annoyed before saying, "You're not fooling anyone you know, and besides, rocks don't have perfect lines." The box went up in smoke as Konohamaru appeared from it, coughing a little at the fact that he used a little too much smoke. "You were the one who beat my grandfather with one technique, right? Teach it to me, please." "Why? I want to become Hokage, just like you." "That's not what I meant. Why do you want to know the technique?" "It's because I want to defeat my teacher and show him that I can become Hokage without his help," Konohamaru stated as Naruto pondered on what to do. "I say you do it." "Why?" "He was ready to attack me earlier for something I didn't do, just like everyone else." "Unlike everyone else though, it wasn't because of me, he was just looking for someone to blame instead of placing the blame on himself." "If you say so," he thought before ending the conversation with Hosaki, only to see a pleading boy looking at him. Sighing, he agreed to help him, which got a grin and an expression of great from his new apprentice, also starting to refer to Naruto as boss. "This is going to take a while," Naruto thought to himself before he heard a giggle from Hosaki. Silencing her by cutting off the mental link, he didn't see the pout that the Fox Queen was giving her jailer. "So, what do you know?" Naruto asked as the two walked on, getting a curious look from the boy. "Why do you want to know that?" "So I know where to start. It would be boring if I told you something that you already knew, no? I guess. Anyways, I know about chakra and how to form it, but that's about it. I also know about your technique and how it defeated my grandfather in one attack," Konohamaru said as Naruto listened on. "Alright, since you already know about chakra and how to use it, as well as the technique, then the next best thing to do is just test it out," Naruto said as Konohamaru looked on in interest. "What should I do?" Konohamaru asked, before Naruto told him to wait, wanting to get confirmation from someone. A few minutes later, Naruto had a grin on his face, especially since he used the Yoko's own words against her. After doing that, Naruto saw a pretty girl near the end of the street. Finding a young female civilian with light brown hair in a ponytail and a blue kimono, Naruto pointed towards her, telling Konohamaru to transform into that woman there. Seeing on whom Naruto was pointing at, Konohamaru used the seal for Henge no Jutsu, and when the smoke cleared, there was a woman. However, the body was extremely fat and her hair was in disarray and even the face was fatty. "So, what do you think?" he asked as Naruto cringed, saying that she looked similar to the female and that the clothes were perfect, but before he could say anything else, he felt a small amount of killer intent behind him. Turning around, he received a punch straight to his head. After she did that, she went to Konohamaru, who undid the jutsu before anything else happened, cringed as he was expecting a blow for himself as well, but all the female said was to do a cuter transformation of herself next time. Saying that she was scary, Naruto could only agree to the boy's judgment. "Alright then, now that you know what not to do, I'm going to get something that will help you with the technique. Let's go," Naruto said as the two of them went off to the bookstore. Using a henge, Naruto went into the bookstore before quickly coming back out, a few books in his hand, and a grin on his face, especially since he was able to prank the old man who always gave him grief when it came to buying something. Sakura was walking through the village with the thought of what would happen in the near future, team placements. I hope I'm placed with someone I like, she thought to herself as she waved hello to Hinata before stopping as the girl called her name. Intrigued, Sakura made her way over to the shy-laden girl. Hey Hinata, she said as Hinata smiled. Are you free, Sakura-chan? Sure. Why do you ask? I was wondering if you wanted to go to the hot springs, Hinata said, poking her fingers together in nervousness. While she lost her stutter years ago after being saved by Naruto, she still reverted to that habit whenever she was nervous. Sure thing, she said as the two walked towards the hot springs, talking about everything and nothing, just happy to be in the other's company, something they wouldn't be able to have for much longer. When they got there, they noticed things in disarray, nothing showing what happened, but the two kunoichi could assume that they just missed a pervert, and while annoyed at the fact the pervert wasn't found, at least the two girls were not looked upon with perverted eyes. Guess we're lucky, huh Hinata? Sakura asked as the blue-haired girl nodded. This is what you meant when you said you weren't going to hurt me, the kunoichi are doing it for you. That isn't true. What I would do is much worse than what these humans can do, trust me. Fine. He finished in a disbelieving tone before seeing Konohamaru wave his hand in front of his face. Swatting it away, Naruto asked the kid if he was okay. I'm alright, I'm sorry for the trouble, he started saying before Naruto interrupted him. Why are you sorry? I'm the one teaching you, and so both the teachers and students' problem lie on the teachers. Naruto said as it only fell on deaf ears. It's because I'm the grandson of a Hokage that people treat me like this. It doesn't matter. Either the prince of the village or a lowly street rat like me, it doesn't matter, at least in my eyes. Now then, we need to go to a training field and work on some small details, he said as the child looked onwards. Such as, right now, you're on step 2 of 3. You just need a little practice before perfecting it and getting to that third and final step. Now then, follow me, Naruto said before heading off at a brisk pace, Konohamaru trying hard to keep up with him. Once the duo got there, Naruto noticed that his apprentice was showing signs of fatigue, but in order to make new limits, he would have to break through the ones he had now. After Konohamaru looked over the book, he looked back at Naruto with a confused look in his eyes. You wanted me to study? Not exactly, and as you saw in that, there were 4 things that made the female look attractive: the face, the chest, the waist, and the butt. Now that you know this, go ahead and try the Oiruke no Jutsu again, keeping all 4 traits in mind. Naruto said as Konohamaru did as Naruto said before a poof went off. Well, not bad, try again. Naruto said, before growing quiet once again as Konohamaru did the ram seal, turning into a much better female than before. Good. I say you got it down now, kiddo, to which Konohamaru grinned at this. Naruto, that teacher of his is coming here. I think he felt your chakra. No problem, it would be a great test for my young apprentice, and in case he fails, I've been working on a jutsu that I wouldn't mind trying out on his teacher as well. Oh, you'll see. I just ask one thing, whatever happens, you don't hold me responsible. And after a few seconds of silence, Naruto got an all right from Hosaki. Ebisu was searching for his student, as well as for the person who brainwashed him into leaving. Looking both high and low, Ebisu hoped that the demon didn't convert him or something else dreadful. Where are you? He thought to himself as he pondered over what he was doing, and how a 12-year-old genin hopeful was undermining him, and as he was thinking of what to do, he felt a small pulse of chakra. Waiting a little longer, he felt it again, this time bigger and longer than the first. Grinning at what he found, Ebisu was happy that the monster didn't kill the honorable grandson, but other things came to his mind. Grinning before he did a shushin to the nearby forest, he suddenly lost the source of the chakra signature and he started to panic, not knowing what the demon would do to an innocent child like his student. Young master should be here somewhere, I just don't know where, Ebisu thought to himself as he shrugged before jumping to a branch. He was an elite teacher and didn't mind searching for his student the old-fashioned way, and as he jumped from branch to branch, he extended his senses, wondering where his student and that bug known as Naruto were. All right, let's take a break. You seem to be getting the hang of the Oiruku no Jutsu, Naruto said as he produced a bottle of juice and tossed it to his apprentice. The young boy grabbed it and opened the container, taking a long swig from it. Thanks. No problem, he said as he then opened his container of juice and took a small sip from it. I got a question for you. If you don't want to answer, I'll understand, but why are you so obsessed with the old man Hokage? Looking at him with shock at asking such a question, the boy slouched a little before telling Naruto. When I was born, Grandpa gave me the name Konohamaru. He took it from the name of this village, but even though it's a name everyone hears many times, no one actually calls me by that name. Whenever anyone sees or calls me, they only see the grandson of a Hokage and no one recognizes me as an individual. I hate that, so I want the title of Hokage right now. After hearing his story, Naruto thought about it before coming to a conclusion. Knowing that he would sound harsh, it needed to be said. You're an idiot. No one would recognize a kid like you as the Hokage. What? You keep shouting, Hokage, Hokage, but if you really want that title so badly, he said before turning to his student and smirking, you need to defeat me first. All right, break time is over, one more time with the Oiruku before I show you something practical. Something practical? What could someone like you teach someone as the honorable grandson? Ebisu asked as he appeared out of the forestry, hearing the last moments of conversation between the two. Glaring at the blonde, Ebisu was wondering what he taught the young master. Why do people always stare at me with those types of eyes? Naruto, the only reason that they do this is because they cannot let go of the past. They still hate me, and you, because of what happened. When a person hates another and does not recognize that person, the eyes become terribly cold when looking at the person they hate. This person, he thinks you are lower than scum. Figures, Naruto thought to himself as he kept his guard up, just in case Ebisu decided to attack. However, he didn't go after Naruto, but Konohamaru. Young master, it's time to go home. I don't want to. Besides, after today I won't need your help anymore. You don't have a choice, young master. I am your teacher and you need to obey me, and what thinks anything that he teaches you would help? Ebisu asked him in his lecturing voice, before pulling on the boy's scarf. He taught me much more than what you did. Konohamaru shouted as he took his scarf off, the cloth coming to Ebisu's hands quickly. Forgive me, young master, but it is impossible to just become Hokage like that. Hokage is a title that you receive when you understand the principles of morality, knowledge, loyalty, getting along with your family, and can use more than 1,000 techniques, he started saying, but was interrupted as Konohamaru put his training to the test, yelling, Henge. Konohamaru transformed into a perfect female with brunette hair reaching to the bottom of her back and asking in a soft and seductress voice, what do you think, teacher? All Ebisu did, however, was look in disgust at the technique. As the boy cancelled the technique, Konohamaru ended in a loose taijutsu stance, complaining that it didn't work. How could you use such an indecent technique like that? I am a gentleman. Did you actually think that a technique like that would work on someone like me? Young master, you're only going to get dumber and dumber if you hang around the likes of him. Besides, how many times have I told you that the quickest path to become a Hokage is to listen to me? Now let's go home before he corrupts your mind even further, young master. Sake-chan, remember when I told you to just watch? Yeah, you're about to see why I asked. Intrigued at this, Hosaki just stood there waiting for what was going to happen. Sitting down on the desk created for her, she watched on. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, Naruto shouted, angry with the teacher who said there were things such as shortcuts to become the Hokage. As several clones appeared, Ebisu smirked before walking to where the group appeared. This is silly. I am an elite teacher, even if I don't look the part and different from Mizuki. Your clones cannot hide the real you, he said before getting into an attack position. However, before he could fight through his clones, they all put their hands in the ram sign before using the Henge no Jutsu. When the massive smoke cloud cleared, several redheads were present. However, these weren't your average girls. These girls were any guy's dream come true, and like most males, Ebisu gawked at them. That moment was all Naruto needed as his clones moved in on him, rubbing their bodies against the male, and before long, Ebisu was knocked out by extreme blood loss as Naruto returned to his regular form, and the clones disappeared. I call it my harem no jutsu, Naruto said as the smoke disappeared, a foxy grin on his face. He was glad that he told Hosaki not to comment on that, otherwise, he would be getting an earful from the vixen about that. Starting to leave the bastard lying on the ground, Naruto stopped as he heard Konohamaru's voice. Why am I still unable to defeat Glass's teacher? It's not that easy. You're trying to take the title of Hokage, something that everyone in the village recognizes. I'm sure there will be many unpleasant things, but eventually, you will find at least one person that recognizes you. It took me some time and a lot of hard work, but it will happen. You need to be prepared to take the title of Hokage and have to do two things later on in life to become Hokage, Naruto told him. What's that? One is don't depend on the closet pervert for everything and learn that there are no shortcuts to becoming Hokage, and the second, you should already know, he said as he walked away. If that's the case, then from now, you and I are rivals, got that? Konohamaru yelled before turning away from Naruto. That's fine. I wouldn't have time to train you anyways since I'm becoming a ninja tomorrow anyways. Sorry, but you're already behind, rival. I will fight you for that title one day. Until then, look forward to it, Konohamaru, Naruto said before turning away. He said my name. Did I already earn Naruto-sensei's respect? Konohamaru thought to himself, the grin on his face getting wider. Konohamaru didn't see it since he was lost in his thoughts, but Naruto raised his hand and waved, signifying a goodbye to the young boy. That was sweet of you, Naru-chan. Thanks. I'm curious though about your thoughts on the harem no jutsu. It was effective, but maybe too effective. Let this be a warning to you. If you ever try to repeat today's events without my consent, let's just say that perverts have earned a special place in hell that's directly under my jurisdiction. I understand. Good. Reaching the front door of his home, he let himself in, noticing that Sakura wasn't there, and probably went to sleep. Heading up to the stairs, Naruto took off his white shirt and blue shorts before getting under the covers. As he entered Dream World, the Kitsune Queen thought that she'd allow him to sleep peacefully just this once, seeing as how early he had to get up and everything that happened already. Sighing quietly to herself, she wondered if she would ever see Kuin again, and if so, would she recognize her in her sealed state? Maybe. Nah, I couldn't ask Naruto to do that. She thought to herself as sleep also claimed her. At 6 o'clock, the sound of 2 alarms started blaring as both Naruto and Sakura hit the snooze button before turning the device off. Naruto got up and grabbed the first shirt and pants that he saw in the drawers before grabbing a pair of boxers and heading to the shower. Seeing that it was free, he slipped in and locked the door. 15 minutes later and his mangy tried combed hair still the usual mess that it was, so he decided just to let it be. Wrapping the towel around his waist and drying himself off, he cleaned the rest of his body off before putting on a black shirt, which still had his spiraling crest on it, but it was tunneling, making it look like a cave. Inside the cave was something that looked like a gigantic red eye, with nothing on the back of the shirt. The pants were dark crimson in color and had a few wolf and fox tails entwined, but more of the wolves than foxes. He opened the door and stared straight into Sakura's emerald-like eyes. Blushing out of embarrassment for a second, Naruto moved aside so the girl could get into the bathroom and take her shower as he went back to his room in order to get the rest of his weapons. After putting the last kunai in its holster by his legs, he yawned once again and put on his new hitai-8. Asking his tenant about something with the cage bunshin and not getting a response, he assumed that she was still asleep and that trying to wake her up would be like waking up the Sanin Tsunade, and he didn't want to deal with what the consequences would be like. A few minutes later, he headed downstairs. A few minutes later, Naruto saw Sakura come down in similar attire, although while his had the details on them, Sakura's outfit was plain. The family crest of the Kinomotos was on the top back of the shirt. She had medical tape over her hands and feet, fingerless gloves over the tape for added protection. After eating breakfast and cleaning up after themselves, the Crimson Duo headed off to the academy for the last time. Both were quiet on the trip there, nervous as hell, and both hoped that they would be within the same genin squad. Sakura didn't care who it was, while Naruto hoped Hinata or Kiba was with him. As they headed inside the doors and into their classroom, they both took a seat where they normally did, and waited for everyone else to come in. Sakura noticed Sasuke was the next one there and sat beside them so that he could be away from his fan club. Now annoyed, Sakura's thoughts and mood changed as Sasuke's aura was starting to affect her. I'd be happy to be with Naru-kun and anyone else, except maybe Sasuke. I don't see what Ino sees in that baka, Sakura thought to herself before looking at Naruto and the happy look that was on his face, and why shouldn't he be happy? He was going to graduate with his friends. Come on karma, just once be on my side. I mean, I've had enough bad karma to at least rack up some good, right? Sighing at the thought, he continued his mental monologue. I just hope I'm teamed with Saku-chan and anyone else. He thought to himself as Iruka appeared at the front of the classroom from the door, still having a few bandages here and there, but for the most part, looked completely healthy. Looking at the team placements scribbled down on his chart, Iruka had a feeling that neither Sakura nor Naruto were going to like the fact of dealing with Uchiha Sasuke, but the Hokage had a good argument for that. Knowing that Iruka could be trusted, Sarutobi told the teacher about what was going to happen in a few months' time, the massacre of the Uchiha. While Iruka was appalled, once Sarutobi explained everything that Itachi gave him, Iruka understood that it would eventually have to happen. He also had the feeling that if Sasuke learned about this, he would go after Itachi and want revenge. Therefore, sticking him with his rival and a girl that didn't like him, would force Sasuke to become better and not coddled by his teammates, or their new senseis. Coming back to the present, Iruka clapped his hands together as the room became quiet. Why couldn't they do that before? He thought to himself in mock pity before going on. Before I rattle off the names of your genin cells, let me first congratulate you on taking your first steps on becoming kunoichi and shinobi. However, you are still only genin and your journey will only begin from here. He said as he let the new genin process the information. Alright, now then, you will now be placed into your genin cell. This will be considered your family up until you head into the next rank, but that probably won't happen anytime soon. As that is settled, Team 1 will be, he said as Naruto didn't completely tune him out, but he wasn't completely listening either, that is until he came to Team 7. Team 7 will consist of the following people: Uzumaki Naruto, Kinomoto Sakura, and the final person will be Uchiha Sasuke. I repeat, Uzumaki Naruto, Kinomoto Sakura, and Uchiha Sasuke make up Team 7. Both Sakura and Naruto grinned at one another, and Sakura felt a cold chill in the air after the other teams called out. When she turned around, every girl that was in the Sasuke fangirl club were glaring daggers at her, almost wishing that she died right then and there. Unfortunately, the girls didn't have too long to stare before Sakura closed her eyes, ignoring everything around her. As Iruka let the class out for a 1-hour lunch break, he sighed to himself as to the political bloodbath that was to come, and to make sure that no one went down other than who should, the shinobi family of Uchiha. Shifting through his thoughts, he let himself get lost in memories gone by as the kids, no, young adults now, had a few last moments to talk to friends that they would have little to no time seeing after their shinobi careers started. After the break, several Junins came to pick up their team and soon, Naruto noticed that they were still waiting for their sensei. Quietly meditating, he felt himself get closer to his core of chakra before coming to Hosaki's classroom. Grr, where's our sensei? He or she is already late enough as it is. He thought aloud as Hosaki giggled at Naruto's antics before Naruto turned his gaze onto her. When asked what, Naruto just sighed before thinking up some plans, still ranting about the lateness of his sensei. I just wonder who our sensei will be. He or she is late enough as it is. You have wire, kunai and other shinobi utensils. Find a way to use them and prank your sensei for when he or she comes inside as punishment for being late. I'll even help, just this once. Grinning as he got up from his chair, he headed over to the doorway and started to make some adjustments, waiting for his new sensei to come. Whoever came through that door was going to be in for a rude awakening when either he or she came to collect his or her new team.